Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 morning session of the Portland City Council. Good morning, Keelan. Please call the roll.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Ryan.
Here.
Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video and teleconference, and the city has made several avenues available to the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGovPDX, www.portlandoregon.gov/video, and channel 30. The public can also provide written testimony to council by providing the council clerk or emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, flexibility, and understanding as we work through these challenging circumstances to manage the city's business. We'll now hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Mayor. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or for the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the city council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
Thank you very much. First up is communications. Keelan, first individual. Please, item 317.
Request of Otto Yunker to address council regarding Zenith.
Good morning.
Otto, can
you hear me?
Okay, there we go. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council Commissioners. My name is Otto Yunker. My pronouns are they, them, and I am here today as a concerned youth to speak on Zenith Energy and its opposition to Portland's claimed environmental practices. There are many reasons that I could outline as to why Zenith is at odds with Portland's environmental policies. Previous testimonies have spoken of the hazards of having such operations in our area, including but not limited to Zenith's blatantly broken promises, the dangers of them operating in an earthquake liquefaction zone, and the strong likelihood of an oil train disaster, which we as a community have not prepared for. But today I'm here to speak to you all, in particular to you, Commissioner Ryan, on the qualities of the air at Zenith's terminal. In my current home at the edge of Northwest Portland, I'm within walking distance of Zenith's Energy Terminal on Front Avenue. I learned this in 2019 when I was invited to a protest at the site. When I walked down the road past the children's daycare center and over the tracks where the oil trains are openly vented, I was greeted by a proffered mask. This was the first time I had encountered face masks in a social setting, a now common sight, and though I donned the mask with apprehension, I quickly came to appreciate its protection as the effects of the area's quality of air became apparent. The scent blanketing us was acrid. I will not tell you the exact chemicals we absorbed into our lungs or how much of them hung in the air, because I can't claim to understand what the stringent sounding names indicate or what the particle count implies. What I will tell you is that a migraine came on within minutes, not just for myself, but for many others who raised their voice on Front Avenue that day. Throughout the evening, it was common to hear fellows bid their farewells, regretting that they were leaving earlier than they intended, but that the air effects could no longer be ignored. I myself left sooner than I had hoped to, and dealt with the headache for days to come, resulting in absences from school. I have not been back to the site since, but I have been listening to the ways Zenith has continued to bypass our city's efforts to protect the area from pollution. I've watched over the terminal from my walks around the neighborhood and through Forest Park, feeling my stomach quiver as I think of the unchecked dangers we allow to stay present in our community. I was disheartened to learn that while I am moving to Cully later this month, I will not be escaping the dangers of Zenith. But then, even of those who are not within the oil train's immediate evacuation zones, nor clouded in the acrid clouds of emitted pollutants, cannot escape the harm that toxic fuel companies such as Zenith cause to our climate. It is with this anecdotal story, contextualized by the facts and figures offered by previous testimonies and sweetened by February's Valentine's, that I repeat what has been stated and pled by many. It is clear that Zenith is not compatible with the land. It is not compatible with a livable future. But at the most base and apparent level, the effects of Zenith operation have on the quality of our air, of our lungs and our bodies is not permittable. Commissioner Dan Ryan, please deny Zenith's air quality permit. Deny them their lux. Thank you all, and thank you for taking the time to hear from me today.
Thank you, appreciate it. Next individual, please, Keelan, item 318.
Request of Gregory Soder to address council regarding Zenith Oil. But it doesn't look like Gregory has joined the meeting
All
yet.
right. Okay, next individual then, 319.
The next three individuals, 319, 320, and 321, have requested to present together as a group.
That's fine. 9 minutes total for the three, please.
Okay, I'll read the titles. 319, request of Shannon Hiller Webb to address council regarding launching participatory budgeting in Portland. 320, request of Erica Fuller to address council regarding launching participatory budgeting in Portland. And 321, request of Amanda Hudson to address council regarding launching participatory budgeting in Portland.
All right, since you've elected to do this together, we'll just let you guys run your show. You have 9 minutes. Good morning.
I'm going to share a slide just as the backdrop for all of us. So let me know if that doesn't.
Nope, looks good. We see it.
Okay, and let me make sure it goes full screen.
Okay.
Sorry, there we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Hudson. I moved to Portland in 2012 to start my doctoral program at Portland State. I considered numerous programs and places for me, but Portland was the place to study community development because of its reputation as a leader in civic engagement. I didn't expect a civically engaged utopia, but I did imagine a community-centered system that I've learned came from progressive community organizing in the 1970s. I think there is a lot to be proud of in Portland's progressive past. However, we must acknowledge its critical shortcomings that have failed to engage our most vulnerable residents. It's time to ensure Portland sustains a progressive future for an inclusive and engaged community that works in partnership with the government. I'm the Director of Education and Programs with Participatory Budgeting Oregon, and I'm joined by two others who would like to share how we imagine Portland in the not too distant future with your support. First, I want to take a second to share what participatory budgeting is. It's a participatory democratic process where community members define, design, and vote on projects that are funded by a portion of the public budget. What makes it so powerful is that community drives the project from ideation, inception, engagement, and creation. It goes beyond conventional public involvement by having community members work closely with government staff to ensure that projects are realistic and that the cost is accurately assessed. It's transparent and it allows for a wide variety of participation, from simply sharing ideas to researching and designing tangible solutions. Even better, the projects that win the most votes through a democratic process become a reality. When community members see their ideas actually implemented, this has a significant impact on their sense of belonging and their trust in their elected officials and government processes, their trust in you. While I'm always excited to see the term participatory used, I want to be sure that we're not just tacking it on without actually ensuring that decision-making is redistributed to the people. The residents of Portland have spent this last year marching in the streets, showing up to testify, forming coalitions, and starting grassroots campaigns because they want to be involved in the city's decision-making. We want more than listening sessions and invitations to join powerless advisory committees. We want real democracy and real power to shape the city that we love. Participatory budgeting has been around for 30 years. There have been thousands of cycles across the world. There are volumes of research showing that it leads to broader participation and equitable investments. We know it works, and it's past time that Portland invests in participatory budgeting so that we can live up to our reputation as a leader in civic engagement. Erica and Shannon are going to share where we see this having the greatest impact. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erica Fuller. I'm running for Centennial School Board because I want to create a communicative, transparent school district where students can influence budgeting decisions. As a person who grew up in the district, graduated from the district, and who has worked in education, I have the connections as a community organizer to bring my unique experience to the school board. I can ensure that we build systems that center the needs of BIPOC folks in order to make sure the District N2 is a more equitable, accessible, and restorative education system. When I was in high school, I was not given opportunities to get involved. I was never asked about what I thought and was not educated on how to influence the public budgeting process. I believe that we need to give young people the opportunity to impact budgeting properties if we want to continue to build progressive leaders for the future. Participatory budgeting brings new transparency and accountability to the use of public funds, brings new voices to the table in determining how public funds should be used and benefit the community. We need PB in order to give the most underserved communities, which are young BIPOC folks, this opportunity for leadership, real leadership. Youth have historically been left out of the conversation in matters that affect their futures, and I want to be a part of changing that pattern. Once I realized PB, I realized that it was a powerful tool to apply in building our youth leadership so we can ensure our education system is accountable to the students it serves. I want to launch the process in the Centennial School District as a way for students to reallocate the funding for student resource officers. Students can determine how to allocate the monies on projects they want to invest in, that they serve their interests in, and community, education, equity, and inclusion. I believe that the city of Portland should invest in PB, and particularly set aside funds for paid representative steering committee in order to ensure that the process designed by and centered around the needs of BIPOC folks. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Shannon, and I can proudly say that I have appeared before this council several times wearing different hats. Today, I am before you as a concerned resident seeking change with a lens as the president of the South Burlingame Neighborhood Association and former Sweeney Board representative for several years. I did not find my neighborhood association, my association found me. I worked alongside my neighbors for 5 years on a project that tested our resilience and commitment, and through it we forged friendships and trust. It was many of them who asked me to step into a role with the neighborhood association and ultimately Sweeney. What I discovered was a broken system that engages the few, that listens to less, and that does not center equity, does not draw in a diverse community, and is relegated to outdated methodologies. As president, I have used every tool to engage my neighbors to join in the neighborhood system model for civic engagement. And like most other neighborhoods, attendance remains low and return on the $2.3 million annual investment of taxpayer dollars is negligible. Most neighborhood meetings have 10 to 15 people in attendance. Very little is advanced for the community beyond a neighborhood cleanup, land use response, or traffic safety demands. What I have heard from neighbors is neighborhood associations do not work on the issues they care about focusing mostly on, land use and transportation, and they want to invest their time in other community building activities. There isn't funding or project management to invest in what they do care about through the neighborhood association model, as the funding goes to coalitions that largely use the taxpayer monies to fund the bloated management structure with little going to the mission of civic engagement. They would like to join in on projects that interest them and suit their availability and leave when completed rather than a long-term ongoing commitment to meetings that don't generate much action. I have been listening. So when I learned about participatory budgeting, a light bulb went off. A process led by the people, with the people, working in tandem with government and funded for civic engagement to real results. That I can get behind, and so can my neighbors. And I'm excited to have Participatory Budgeting Oregon present to our neighborhood board in June, and understand they intend to reach out to all neighborhoods to imagine as I have. I understand that City Council will have a work session in the future to discuss the coalition model structure, and I urge you to lead with an open mind, to consider those left out and left behind, and imagine a better Portland through your leadership and investment. I'm hoping for a more expansive neighborhood association engagement, more community-based organizations benefiting from this model together, an inclusive future. Participatory budgeting is not untested. In fact, it has been proven with metrics and research to support its effectiveness of the process for a brave new world. Yet it is not mainstream either for funding. It is not mainstream either, and funding participatory budgeting would allow Portland to hold on to the reputation of a progressive leader, a model city, one to be studied yet again, for this to be a legacy by which Portland and your leadership are defined. We hope the City of Portland will allocate a portion of the funds they have received through the American Rescue Plan Act to contribute to a youth-led participatory budgeting process that will be launched in East Portland in Senator Jana's, Senator Gorsuch's, and Representative Rose's districts. Also, we strongly believe that participatory budgeting should be used to allocate funding through our neighborhood association system to engage the many and not the few, and ensure the $2.3 million is in service to building a stronger, civically engaged community to impact Portland now and into the future. Thank you for your time.
Well, first of all, thank you for your testimony. And I just want to say, I don't think we've ever had 3 people testify together at the same time with the 9-minute restriction and have it come within 5 seconds of the 9 minutes. So that's about as well as you can do. Thank you very much. And that was a great presentation, and I appreciate it very much. Keelan, does that complete our public testimony on communications this morning? I think it does.
Yes, it does.
All right, very good. First up, time certain item number. Actually, let's go to the consent agenda. Have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
We've had no requests.
Please call the roll on the consent agenda, then we'll go to time certain.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. Please call items on the time certain 322, 323, and 324.
Item 322, amend the city employee benefits program to reflect necessary plan design changes as recommended by the Labor Management Benefits Committee and as administratively required by the Bureau of Human Resources for the city's plan offerings beginning July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2022. 323, authorize the Chief Human Resources Officer to enter into a contract and any prerequisite business associate agreements with Business Solver, providing benefit administrative software services on behalf of the Bureau of Human Resources Benefits Office. And 324, amend contract with Express Scripts, Inc. through June 30, 2024, and increase funding for the prescription coverage under the self-funded health plans administered by the Bureau of Human Resources Benefits Office.
Thanks, Keelan. Every year, the city's Labor Management Benefits Committee reviews the employee benefits programs and then provides recommendations for necessary changes to the City Council. The first ordinance would approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 benefit plan document addressing recommendations that are given to us by the Labor Management Benefits Committee, in addition to both state and federally mandated changes. The second ordinance would authorize the Chief Human Resources Officer to enter into contract and business associate agreements with Business Solver, providing benefit administrative software services on behalf of the Benefits Office. The third ordinance would amend the contract with Express Scripts through June 30th, 2024, and increase the funding for the prescription coverage under the self-funded health plans administered by the Benefits Office. Council will, of course, take these ordinances up separately, but I understand the Bureau of Human Resources would like to provide information on all three ordinances during their presentation. Kathy Bless, our Chief Human Resources Officer, and Michelle Taylor, our Benefits Manager, are on call to walk us through the ordinances. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to turn it over to Michelle because she has all of the information for you this morning.
All right, good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Michelle Taylor, Benefit Manager with the Bureau of Human Resources, and I'm here to talk about three ordinances which will be presented all together to you. Last week's mental health proclamation highlighted the great work being provided through the city's Strong Wellbeing Program. Joel, Courtney, Taisha have been tremendous advocates of a holistic, inclusive, and human-centered approach to our work. I feel privileged today to be following them in front of you all and expand on additional benefit office accomplishments throughout the pandemic. When we were here last year presenting the 2020-2021 benefit plan information, we were really only 2 months into the pandemic. Since May, we have completed our first entirely virtual benefit open enrollment period with a near record turnout of 3,079 employees actively completing their elections. It's about 50% of our employee population. Except for the flexible spending accounts, all other elections carry over from year to year, so employees who didn't log on kept their same coverage. We've implemented allowable flexible spending account plan deadline changes, so employees were less at risk of losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in hard-earned contributions. We assisted employees with other benefit changes due to fluctuating daycare needs, to spouse domestic partners who lost coverage throughout their other employer-sponsored care. We helped increase life insurance and disability coverages as people saw the pandemic impact their loved ones. We saw 167 employees take advantage of the CARES Act allowance to withdraw deferred compensation plan contributions due to hardships brought on by the pandemic. 265 former employees are receiving new COBRA notifications and election windows because they may be eligible now for a 6-month subsidy as part of the American Rescue Plan passed this March. We created, implemented, and provided ongoing service for COVID paid leave programs, which supported 1,134 employees who used a total of 112,403 hours of qualified related leave. The COVID-19 response leave sharing program allotted over 4,000 hours of donated leave to over a dozen employees who would have otherwise been in an unpaid status because of their COVID-related leave after exhausting all of their other paid leave options. We temporarily expanded the Employee Assistance Plan benefits to 170 casual and seasonal employees so they could access much needed mental health benefits throughout the pandemic. We continued our 98% compliance rate in the city's preventive care initiative, where employees need a qualified medical exam once every 2 years to maintain the city's highest contribution towards healthcare coverage. We partnered with our vendors to enhance telehealth options, ensuring plan participants could continue their care virtually. In the last 9 months, there have been over 19,000 telehealth appointments completed within the self-funded plan, with 4 of the top 5 reasons related to mental health. Rounding out the top 5 were COVID-related appointments. Telehealth utilization on the Kaiser side is up over 600% since the beginning of the pandemic. Members asked for safe maintenance medication refill options through their pharmacies. With additional education and marketing, we saw almost a 4% increase in home delivery utilization and over a 7% increase in 90-day prescription fills versus 30-day fills. Our Healthy Foundations program shifted to virtual HIPAA-compliant offerings, expanding the program's reach, knowing the pandemic could have devastating impacts on those with chronic conditions. We participated in monthly conversations with the DEEP group to find ways that the Bureau of Human Resources and the Benefit Office can support employees. We're currently working on a new parent guide because of this collaboration. We implemented performance guarantees with our vendor partners to expand access to qualified providers who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, especially in the mental health field. We entered into a contract with Carrot to provide employees and dependents access to fertility and family forming education, virtual chats with physicians and specialists, library of resources, exclusive discounts, and holistic pregnancy support. We negotiated vendor contracts, implemented programs, and managed trends to keep costs consistently below national increases as we understand the impact benefits has on Bureau budgets and employees. I just want to thank our valued partners within the Labor Management Benefit Committee, the Portland Police Association, who have collaborated on plan changes with respect to fiscal responsibility and sustainability required to protect the health funds. I want to extend a special thank you to our vendor partners for their continued support in providing innovative benefits, which meet the need of our employees and their dependents. Lastly, a special thank you to the entire Benefits and Bureau of Human Resources team. I'm so proud to be a part of a team that's working through this pandemic and continues to be advocates and supporters of city employees. So with that being said, the first ordinance, number 322, authorizes changes to the health plan document for the new benefit plan year, which is set to begin July 1 of 2021. While the plan documents represent the legal requirements of the health plan and the health reimbursement account, by approving this ordinance, you are also approving the benefit plan design changes recommended by Labor Management Benefit Committee and for all administrative requirements which BHR and the Benefit Office are responsible to fulfill. We have one state-based regulatory change, which is participation in the Family Connects Oregon program, which covers newborn nurse home visits related to social determinants of health. This program is a result of Oregon's Senate Bill 526, which was passed back in 2019. Visits will be available to participants within certain counties, and those are determined by the state, and they'll expand to all counties over a 5-year period. There are no federal regulatory changes to report to you all this year. And then I'm going to go into the changes recommended by the Labor Management Benefit Committee, and there's a handful, so bear with me for just a moment. The first one is an Express Scripts pharmacy implementation of the Rational Med and Advanced Opioid Management programs. Both programs are designed with member safety in mind by alerting physicians to potential interactions and limiting quantities of short-acting opioid prescriptions. Last year, we had 467 members who would have been anticipated by a real-time safety alert had the Rational Med program been in place. Rational Med does not prevent a member from getting a prescription. It merely alerts the prescribing physician of any possible safety issue or gap in care. This program promotes member health, prevention of adverse events, and the plan could see a savings over time. The Advanced Opioid Management Program addresses opioid use with member education and support, safety edits and messaging at the pharmacy, prescriber messaging, safe disposal, and drug quantity management and intervention. The LMBC and Benefit Office are recommending these benefits to ensure safety and support amongst our health plan participants. Longtime opioid users with chronic conditions such as cancer would not be impacted by this program. Changes to the City Core medical plan include increasing the adult hearing aid coverage from 60% to 80%, so it equitably aligns with other covered services. Adding coverage for medically necessary orthotics, subject to the plan year's deductible and coinsurance, and limited to one pair per year. Expansion of the diabetes management program to pre-diabetic members, allowing for no-cost medical nutrition therapy, physical education, and training for patient self-management. This is an important step in diabetes prevention. Last one for City Core is the implementation of MODA's coordinated specialty programs for behavioral health and disease management program for pain conditions. Both programs provide trauma-informed and evidence-based treatments, including outreach and care coordination. A change for the VSP, which is Vision Service Plan, buy-up option only. We are proposing the addition of SunCare and Easy Options program to the buy-up plan. The addition of SunCare allows members to use the prescription frame allowance towards the purchase of non-prescription sunglasses. This added benefit will encourage members to seek routine vision care, as it must be used in conjunction with the vision exam. Easy Options allows members to personalize their vision benefits easily and affordably by choosing their own upgrade. Choices include a $250 frame allowance, anti-glare lenses, progressive, light reactive, or a contact lens allowance. Based on the LMBC recommended changes and state and federal regulatory changes, the final health premium costs and self-funded rates are increasing approximately 3% citywide for fiscal year 2021-22. The health operating budgets include appropriations in support of health plan costs associated with this ordinance. As in prior years, we draw down health operating fund reserves to lessen cost impacts to bureaus and employees. This has been an important strategy to balance against high increases. The second ordinance, number 323, authorizes the Chief Human Resources Officer to enter into contract and any prerequisite business associate agreement with Business Solver, providing benefit administrative software on behalf of the benefit office. We are seeking a 5-year contract with a not to exceed value of $2.5 million for benefit administrative software services set to begin no later than January 1, 2022. Our current contract is nearing the 10-year mark, and this ensures the city has an accurate system of record, correct calculation of premiums for bureaus and employees, HIPAA compliant management of plan participant eligibility, and it ensures secure employee access to enroll in benefits from any device. Changing vendors will provide system enhancements and added capabilities not currently available to us. We will combine our COBRA retiree system with our active population, allowing for streamlined processes, access to payment history, and ability to make election changes currently handled through a paper enrollment process right now. Additional enhancements include tracking for city programs such as the Preventive Care Initiative, decision-making tools for employees, and room for expansion in the future with total rewards statements. This system will also provide more efficient compliance with regulations such as the Affordable Care Act and our required 1095 tax reporting. The third and final ordinance, number 324, authorizes the Chief Human Resources Officer to renew our contract with Express Scripts to continue pharmacy benefit management services within our self-funded health plans. This would be a 3-year contract extension set to expire June 30 of 2024 and includes a not to exceed amount of $55 million. Express Scripts has been the pharmacy benefit manager for 5 years after obtaining our business through a competitive bid process. This extension comes after extensive market checks, rate negotiations, price guarantees for the upcoming contract period. The city was able to negotiate a 10.5% savings and an 8.5% save, or 8.9% for PPA over our current pricing module. And that's valued to save over $4 million in the 3-year period of time. Pharmacy costs are projected to increase between 6 and 10% annually. So any administrative fee reductions, increased discounts, and rebates help the city offset continued increases. Continued specialty program implementations like the one we described earlier strategic contract negotiations, all of those will be key in helping the city curb pharmacy costs over time. The additional contract funding is required to continue providing these pharmacy benefit management services, to pay claims appropriately, and to support the 3-year contract extension. The requested funds for these 3 ordinances are available within the city and PPA Health operating funds. This concludes my remarks, and I ask for your support in authorizing these ordinances, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have. Thank you.
Very good. Terrific presentation. Colleagues, any questions at this point? Keelan, do we have public testimony on 322, 23, or 24?
No one is on the line for those items.
All right. That was a great presentation. Thank you. With that, Keelan, please, these are all emergency ordinances. Please call the roll on 322.
Ryan?
Yes, I want to thank you, Director Bless and Michelle Taylor. That was a great presentation. It was very informative. It was wonderful to hear about Senate Bill 526 being woven into the benefit package. And also just want to compliment all your agility and flexibility during the COVID pandemic. It's very impressive. I know as somebody that had to had to plug into the services, it was quite easy. And I owe you actually, Michelle Taylor, for that and your staff. I vote aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Maps?
Aye.
Rubio?
I want to thank you, Michelle, and also Director Kathy Bless, and also the Labor Management Benefits Committee for their work on these amendments that we're considering today. And now more than ever, it's really important that we have a competitive benefits program in order to support the health and well-being of all our employees, and also to achieve our goal as employer of choice. So thank you again for your work on behalf of our employees. I vote aye.
Wheeler?
Well, thank you for a great presentation. Thanks for the hard work. These benefit plan changes expand critical health access for all of our city employees. And I appreciate that equity and the social determinants of health are at the forefront of the decision-making that led to some of these changes. We know that the effects of the pandemic that we're all experiencing continue to strain both mental as well as physical health. And so I'm really encouraged that we get to provide expanded services while maintaining very low increases in the overall cost structure. I think you did a terrific job of balancing the needs with the desire of our employees to keep costs low. I certainly want to add my thanks to the BHR staff and members of the Labor Management Benefits Committee for just terrific work and long hours that we're putting into amending the City of Portland Employee Benefits Program to improve our plan offerings. And finally, I think it just goes without saying that a year plus of pandemic, health benefits are going to be on everybody's mind as they make decisions about seeking employment with any employer. So it's really important that we maintain our strong commitment to health benefits and the wellness of our employees, and this certainly does it. So I'm happy to vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call the roll on 323.
Ryan?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Maps?
Aye.
Rubio?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. 324. Please call the roll.
Ryan?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Maps?
Aye.
Rubio?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. I called through, that was 324, correct? So we got through.
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Mind freeze there for a minute. Sorry. We're not quite at the time that I can call 325. So why don't we go, please, to the regular agenda, and let's do 339, please.
Appoint members to the Development Review Advisory Committee for terms to expire May 11, 2024.
Excellent. And that is Commissioner Ryan. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the Development Review Advisory Committee, known as DRAC, was established in June of 2001 as the city's primary advisory body regarding development review. DRAC seeks to foster a timely, predictable, and accountable development review process and advocates for consistent and fair application of regulations. DRAC's 17 members represent groups with interest in development and development review processes. DRAC members are appointed by the City Council to 1 3-year term with the possibility of serving a second 3-year term. I'm so pleased today to present 7 candidates for appointment to a 3-year term as DRAC members. They include Bobby Daniels for Design Professionals, Libby Deal for Neighborhood Coalition Land Use Committees, Stephanie Gray for Environmental Conservation and Green Building, William Steve Lee for Land Use Planning Professionals, Samuel Miller for Small Business, Eric Payne for Low Income Housing Developers, and Maurice Raming for Minority Construction Contractors and Development Professionals. I will now hand it over to BDS staffer, Mark Fetters. Mark, please take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, and good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. We are very excited to present these 7 candidates to you this morning for consideration as nomination as members of the Development Review Advisory Committee, or the DRAC. These candidates were chosen after a thorough review process that looked at 37 applicants for vacant positions on the committee, and was really an intentional effort to increase participation on the committee from communities of color. There are currently 10 vacancies on the committee. With these 7 candidates, if they are appointed, 3 vacancies will remain, and we are just about ready to launch a new recruitment to fill those positions. So I'd like to briefly introduce the members. I know some of them are present, and we'll give a chance for them to speak as well. So Bobby Daniels is nominated for the Design Professionals position. Bobby is an owner's representative and construction project manager at the Native American-owned firm, the Wanaha Group. Bobby has more than 20 years experience in design and construction and consults on the development of affordable housing and public improvement projects. Libby Deal is being nominated for the Neighborhood Coalition Land Use Committee's position. Libby is a board member and the land use chair for the King Neighborhood Association. And Libby is passionate about civic engagement and wants to enable others to become more involved in their communities. Stephanie Gray is nominated for the Environmental Conservation and Green Building position. Stephanie has an architecture degree and a long-standing passion in working to ensure the integration of nature and the built environments. Stephanie is the Vice President of Operations for All Hands Raised and has spent her professional life working as a nonprofit executive in organizations committed to diversity and equity. Stephanie also currently serves on the Urban Green Spaces Institute board. Steve Lee is being nominated for the Land Use Planning Professionals position. Steve is the Affirmative Action Manager for Oregon Governor Kate Brown. He has a master's degree in urban and regional planning and extensive experience as a mediator and policy advisor. Sam Miller is nominated for the Small Businesses position. Sam has owned small businesses and is on the board of directors for the Northeast Business Association and works with Prosper Portland to assist the BIPOC community. Eric Payne is nominated for the low-income housing developers position. Eric is the CEO and co-founder of Community Development Partners, which works with BIPOC groups to develop affordable housing communities. And finally, Maurice Raming is nominated for the Minority Construction Contractors and Development Professionals position. Maurice is the president of O'Neill Construction Group, and he mentors women and minorities in the construction industry. Maurice is also a member of the National Association of Minority Contractors Hall of Fame. So these were, as I said, we're very excited about these candidates. They bring a wealth of relevant experience as well as important perspectives to the DRAC, and we're very pleased to present them. I know some of them are present, and for those who are, we wanted to give you a chance just to say hello and also to respond to the question of what really puts the fire in your belly about serving on the DRAC? What excites you about that? So based on how you're appearing on my screen, Libby, can we start with you?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, Libby.
Great. I'm Libby Deal, and I'm so honored to be nominated for this DRAC committee. And what puts the fire in my belly to serve on this committee and serve the city of Portland? Well, that's easy. It's my real belly, which has a big old baby in it. And I have another baby in the bathtub right now. So I'm a third generation Portlander. I was privileged enough to be born and raised in Portland, and, you know, raising my family in Portland continues to motivate me to be civically engaged and to try and increase the amount of civic engagement in Portland, so Portland can become, you know, can be a beautiful place and a place where everyone can prosper, people from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds and beliefs. And I think development is really important to that, because our built environment, particularly our homes, are how you make your families and how you can have families that thrive. And that's what puts the fire in my belly.
Thank you, Libby. Sam, would you go next?
Yes, good morning, City Council, Mayor, good morning. Good morning, hi, Dan, good to see you. So, having been part of Portland's infrastructure now for almost 30 years and seen the opportunities that were not available to people of color with regard to business, it's really important for me that we provide opportunities so that what I've learned, in order to build infrastructure in an economy, people have to be able to support themselves. In order to build infrastructure in a society, people have to be able to start having conversations about generational wealth for their families. And only business owners can do that, because no matter how well paid the job may be, your budget equals the job. But if you start to own something, not only can you help your family to develop generational wealth, but you can assist other families. My experience has been, especially in Black-owned businesses, that most of the people that work in Black-owned businesses are neighbors of the people that own the company. And over time, what ends up happening is not only do you provide opportunities for these people to get secure employment, but you also begin to develop opportunities for them to become homeowners. And our economy changes when people go from renters to homeowners. Everything changes. Crime is no longer welcome in a place that you own. Your children become more proud of the fact that your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister has an opportunity to not only support themselves, but also to support other people in the neighborhood. I know that we can do this in Portland. We've worked really, really hard in the Seoul District to do this up to this point, and I know that we can do that. So I'm really, really, really honored to be a part of this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Bobby, would you go next?
Right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I am one of the many parents out there who is on the homeschooling distance learning tech. So you might hear little rugrats flying through. I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old and a loud bulldog. So, but I will go and say that a lot of the things that have been said before with Libby and Sam are true for me. I'm a first generation Portland, Oregon. I've been here my whole life, and I've seen quite a bit of changes in these 46 years. And I think the perspective I bring is half my career has been in the architectural profession. The other half has been in construction, and I've really been able to see the gamut of how, I guess, in particular, BDS has affected the way that things are developed in the city. And my hope is to bring a little more, I guess, I don't know if the right word is levity, but at least understanding from both sides. I've worked for the city as well. And I know a lot of people in these departments, and it's a challenge. And I feel like, you know, if you're not the cliche, very cliche, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I feel like we can all get to a better place if we you know, take the time and really look at these challenges and find better ways to get developments built in a timely fashion. I feel like Portland, as big of a metropolis it is, feels like it's lagging in this work. We just got on to electronic permitting 2 years ago. So it just seems like there's some opportunities here, and I want to hold the city and the developers accountable for their roles in this. So.
Thank you, Bobby. Eric.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm excited to be here, being asked to participate, nominated for DRAC, CDP's developer focused on affordable housing and helping to solve the housing crisis, mainly working in Portland and metro area. And think that the most exciting thing is just being able to bring in our perspective from our team, as well as partner organizations that we work with. We're doing a lot of work with NEA and NARA, Hacienda, SEI, and other housing partners within the city. And I think being able to bring those varied perspectives to the table to collaborate with the city on how we can make change to process in order to make things more efficient and ultimately get our housing development work to the finish line sooner is what's really exciting for me, to figure out how we can be better partners with the communities that we're working with and how we can get housing units produced and families moved into permanently affordable housing as quickly as possible. So excited about the collaboration potential in providing different perspectives.
Thank you, Eric. Steve.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mr. Mayor. I am honored to kind of be in front of you and have you consider me for membership on the DRAC. I think that when I left here to go to planning school, I was a transportation planner, and I come back now as an urban development planner, right? My kind of perspective about how cities work really expanded quite a bit in the years that I was away. And the intersection of kind of the management of place, transportation, and the opportunity for prosperity, well-being, and environmental health for people is really something that cities do really well. It's kind of the place where cities sit that other governments don't. And I think my interest in being here is just to make cities work better. I think we in Portland can do a better job. I want to be a part of that. I think there's tremendous opportunity kind of going forward, particularly in the post-pandemic environment, and kind of facing some of our problems with houselessness and utilization of unused space. I think there are lots of ways that I could make a contribution to the committee and kind of position it for success and helping make Portland work better. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. And Stephanie.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. I want to thank you for your consideration of my nomination to the DRAC. I'm honored to be considered. I have a long-standing passion for ensuring that as a citizen of Portland, I do everything to make it a better place. And I believe that the DRAC hopefully can provide that level of service for me as a citizen. I have an architecture degree, and in doing that, I have a real passion, as I said in my bio, for the integration of the natural environment with the built environment. But I also have a passion for designing for communities, for all citizens of any community. And so if I'm appointed to the DRAC and this goes forward, I want to bring a perspective in the decisions that we make to make sure they benefit everyone that lives in Portland, not just a few people. This community is enriched by different perspectives, different backgrounds, different race and ethnicities, and an understanding and an honoring of that. And I hope that I can bring that level of perspective as the DRAC looks at design decision and development decisions that can benefit everyone in Portland. I will say that my service on the Portland Parks Board a number of years ago really brought home the importance of community involvement and citizens of Portland in decisions that are being made by the city of Portland. And I found that experience on the Portland Parks Board to be very enriching and satisfying. And I look forward to that similar experience serving on the DRAC.
Thank you, Stephanie. The remaining candidate, Maurice Roming, let me know he was in a meeting this morning. He wasn't going to be available until at least 11 o'clock. And so unfortunately, he's not here in the meeting. But Mayor and council members, if you have questions for me or for the nominees, we'd be happy to take those.
Colleagues, any further questions of these nominees? These are outstanding nominees. Thank you for bringing them forward. Just terrific.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept the report as presented.
Commissioner Hardesty moves the report. Do we have a second?
And I'll second, yeah.
Commissioner Ryan, thank you for seconding the report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll on the report.
Ryan,
Yes, I want to just take a moment and pause to say this feels good. There's been a lot of dialogue with Director Esau to get to a place where we could really recruit hard and think really strategically about the who to build the composite for this very important body. And so I look on the screen right now and I see some very, very familiar faces and your lived experiences and your talent and your technical experience. It's really an honor to know that all of you are committed to a 3-year term to serve the city. Libby, you did steal the show by standing up and showing us the fire in your belly. And with that, I will put a big smile on my face and say aye.
Hardesty.
I want to also thank the Bureau and the committee who brought this fine, esteemed panel forward for appointment. I'm very, very, very impressed with each of your backgrounds, each of your commitments to the city of Portland, and your commitment to really helping us think very critically as we come out of this pandemic. Mr. Lee, you struck my core when you talked about what we will be building coming out of this pandemic. And we will need creativity, and we will need to be thinking outside of the limits that we've normally had. And we must center BIPOC community members and the economic prosperity that comes as we rebuild. And I can't think of a finer team to help us have those very difficult conversations and make those really difficult choices. So thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you for the incredible recruitment job that was done. And I just want to admire the fact that there are at least 4 African-American men that will be on this committee. And that is not a normal appointment process at the city of Portland, let me just say. And it feels good to know that when we are intentional, we get good results. So thank you all, everybody, for your willingness to serve, and I look forward to the hard work we do together. I vote aye.
I just wanted to express how impressed I am by the quality of the candidates that we have before us today. And I also want to thank all the candidates for their service to our city. I vote aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank Commissioner Ryan for these really great appointments. This is a really stellar group. I have the honor of knowing or working with several of the appointees in this cohort, and I want to really lift up that these appointees are very highly regarded in the community and in their respective industries. And they are very reflective of Portland in 2021. So to our new design colleagues, like my colleagues have stated, I'm really excited for the experience and the perspectives that you're going to bring to this work. And I want to thank you all so much, as everyone else has expressed, about your willingness to serve our city in this really critical way and in this very critical time. So I look forward to seeing the results of the future work that you all do together. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Well, I just want to add to the cheers of my colleagues. This is a phenomenal panel of residents of this community. And as Commissioner Rubio just said, these are individuals who are highly respected in their respective fields. The committee represents the community not only as it stands today, but as it will be in the years ahead. And I just think it's great. And Commissioner Ryan, thank you to you and your team for doing such a great job of bringing these folks forward. But most importantly, I just want to thank our nominees for their willingness to serve. This is great. This is what democracy is supposed to look like, when people step forward and offer what they can offer from their perspective to help better the community. And I could not be prouder at this moment to support this slate of candidates. I vote aye. The report is accepted. And the appointments are approved.
Maurice Roming just joined. We just voted on you, Maurice, but maybe we'd allow him to say a couple words as well.
Of course. Yeah, go ahead. Hi, Maurice.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioners. And I apologize. I had sorry, but I just want to say I'm excited about this because as we I'm excited about this commission. I'm excited about this work. I know that there's a lot of work ahead, but I'm just really excited because I think we have the right team and the right group to actually come and tackle some of this historical challenges. And so, as many of you guys know, I'm passionate about this work. I really enjoy it. So I really am excited and look forward to the opportunity to serve and to really make our city a better place for everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Roming. We're glad that you could join us. And thank God you didn't say you didn't want to be on the committee, because we'd already voted and you're already in. So congratulations to you and your peers. And we're so appreciative of your service and theirs as well. Thank you. Colleagues, Commissioner Hardesty, yeah, you bet.
Mayor, you need to vote.
I did. I voted on it. The report is accepted and the appointments are approved. Thank you. The next item is 325, time certain.
Amend permit fee schedules for building, electrical, land use services, mechanical, enforcement, plumbing, signs, site development, and land use services fee schedule for the hearings office.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes. Well, today we have before us proposed fee changes for the Bureau of Development Services. BDS is responsible for administering and enforcing the state building code, as well as administering and enforcing the city's zoning code, portions of the tree code, and regulations on floating structures, erosion control, signs, murals, and property maintenance. 98% of BDS funding comes from permit fees and charges for service. Fees need to be set at a rate to cover the cost of providing these services. The ability for BDS to provide timely, predictable services is essential in keeping the construction industry working, adding to the housing supply, supporting business development, and attracting investment in Portland. The fee changes proposed today are necessary to maintain fiscal stability, implement important process and technology improvements, and also provide continuity of service delivery. With us today are BDS Deputy Director Elshad Hajiev and BDS Budget and Finance Manager Kyle O'Brien to provide additional background and information about the proposal. Please take it away, Elshad and Kyle.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Good morning, Commissioners and the Mayor. Elshad Hajiev, Deputy Director of Bureau of Development Services. As Commissioner Ryan mentioned, BDS is responsible for administering and enforcing a variety of state building codes as well as local codes. Nearly all of our services are funded solely through permit fees and charges for services. Throughout the pandemic caused by COVID-19, as you know, construction was deemed an essential business, and BDS never stopped providing services to our customers. We also significantly expanded services that we were providing online. However, the economic crisis caused by the virus caused a substantial decline in development activity, specifically in the multifamily development, office development, hotel space, and other areas. At the same time, as the construction activity was declining, the the Bureau experienced significant increases in personnel costs and also other costs associated with material and services. As a result of those cost increases, now some of the fees that the Bureau is charging to our customers are below cost recovery. And as Commissioner Ryan mentioned, 98% of our revenues are coming from fees and services, which means that we have to be 100% cost recovery on our services and fees. Over the last year, we've been significantly drawing on our reserves to compensate for the decline in the activity and as well as the increases in our costs. We're proposing the fee changes for majority of our programs, and we, over the years, the Bureau always try to increase those the fees gradually, not to affect our customers too drastically. And this is the case in this year too. Most of our fees are going up by only 5%. And even with those proposed fee changes, it will be still very difficult to achieve 100% cost recovery in fiscal year 21-22. We've been very proactive in addressing the downturn. We did offer a variety of saving measures to our employees, voluntary measures that were passed by the Council under the Safety Net Ordinance. We did hiring freezes. We even went to layoffs in March of this year, and we laid off 11 employees. We are gaining a lot of efficiencies through electronic plan review, online permitting system, and portal and payment portal. And we are using other efforts to reduce our costs and keep our costs low. The goals that the Bureau is trying to achieve with these fee changes is to minimize reduction in our service levels, because what those fee increases mean to us is additional $2.1 million per year, which means that that's the funding for approximately 15 to 16 FTE. We also will be using the additional revenue generated by these fees to continue to fund the technology and process improvement work. And again, the main factor why we are increasing our fees is to keep up with the rising costs. The Bureau has done pretty extensive outreach to the community. We worked with DRAC very purposefully on the fee changes. We did several presentations to the committee. We did advertise the fee changes in our Plans Examiner newsletter. Our website was updated with proposed fee changes, as well as the State of Oregon Bureau of BCD Building Codes Division was also posted our fee changes. Our manager has been proactively reaching to key industry groups also to make them aware of the changes that are coming. In short, the summary of changes, as I mentioned before, is the 5% fee increase across most of the programs. These fee changes affect building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, site development, science, enforcement, land use services, and hearings officer fee schedules. We're not proposing any fee changes to the zoning enforcement program. Overall, again, the fee change is 5% increase. Some of the fees are going up slightly by more than that, but some of them are not being increased depending on the cost recovery for the certain fee. That concludes my presentation. I want to thank BDS's finance team, Kyle O'Brien and Ray Gallinat, for their work on this proposed fee change. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that presentation, a very thorough presentation. I heard you say that the fee change only addresses the increased costs, and so it's not really covering the deficit that you are experiencing as a Bureau. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement. Our fee changes are reflective of our increasing costs. Even though we're experiencing also lower revenues that in prior years, that the fee increase that we're proposing right now will not be enough to cover the lack of construction projects that are coming forward.
And what do you see as the impact on affordable housing projects? And when I say affordable housing, I mean at 60% MFI and under. What do you see the impact on those projects moving forward with the fee increase?
For some of the affordable housing projects, we do have programs when we waive some of the fees or reduce them. So as far as the affordable projects go, I don't believe that the impact will be as big as 5%. We did provide council with the comparisons of the old fee schedules, old fees that would have been charged, let's say, based on the current fee schedule versus the 5% that we're proposing. And it's, let me just get to that. So. Okay, I'm almost there. I'm sorry about the, so I'm looking at the commercial project that is a 4-story, 50-unit apartment building. That would be probably something that will qualify, but will be under affordable housing. And it looks like that the overall increase in BDS's fees will be approximately around $6,000. So it's for the entire impact. If there are no waivers, if there are no anything else is being given, that's approximately $6,000.
So thank you. But what I know about low-income housing providers that are building housing is that every little bit is kind of like toothpaste, using toothpaste to build an airplane. Every tiny increase actually makes it harder to build affordable housing. And so it may sound like not a lot of money in the scheme, but it could actually make or break many nonprofit deals that are coming down the pike. So I am concerned about the continued increase in fees having a very negative impact on nonprofit housing providers, because those are the ones we're primarily reliant on to increase the stock of housing people can afford to live in. So it is a balancing act, and I do understand that you're balancing many factors, but I'm very concerned about that significant of an increase for nonprofit housing providers. Thank you.
Commissioner Mapps.
Thank you. I want to thank staff for that excellent presentation. I was just wondering if the DRAC took a position on the proposed fee increases, and if they did, what did they say?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Mapps. We did do a couple of presentations to the DRAC on the fee changes. Overall, they understand why fees are going up, and I would say they support our efforts to make sure that the Bureau is financially stable. And this is that the fee change is a part of that effort to make sure that the Bureau is financially stable and that we can continue to provide services and maintain the service levels. That's what they're interested in, that we are stable to provide service, continue providing service to them. So from that point of view, they're supportive of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elshad. I want to also acknowledge how much outreach you've been doing with all of our stakeholders and customers throughout this process. I know you've went to great lengths. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Very good. If no further questions, colleagues, Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this ordinance?
Yes, Mayor. We have 3 people on the line to testify.
Excellent. 3 minutes each. Name for the record, please. Go ahead and call.
First up, we have John Duran.
Hi, John.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, my name is John Duran. I'm the Secretary Treasurer for AFSCME Local 189. Also, in full transparency, I'm the lead accountant for the Bureau of Development Services, but I'm not here today speaking on behalf of the Bureau or in my capacity as a city employee. AFSCME Local 189, part of the District Council of Trade Unions, who represent 44% of all employees at the Bureau of Development Services, fully support all the recommended fee changes proposed by BDS. We feel they are essential in helping to provide a more financially stable platform that aids in ensuring the Bureau can be adequately staffed to meet reasonable service levels. Currently, the Bureau of Development Services budget only receives 2% support from the general fund, and as such, the Bureau must charge fees to cover the cost of its operations. There have been several years in recent past where BDS has not raised fees and even reduced fees when cost recovery allowed. Meanwhile, labor costs, as well as private sector competition for the same highly skilled and technical positions BDS requires to operate, have increased steadily. AFSCME has noted and is keenly aware of the difficulties experienced in recruitment and retention over the years since the Great Recession. We have previously and continue to push for wage adjustments in our collective bargaining negotiations that help make these city jobs more competitive. At a minimum, we feel cost of living adjustments must be preserved to help compensate for upcoming predictably high inflation and to avoid falling further behind private sector competition. Without competitive pay, BDS will not be able to attract and retain the talent it needs to preserve sufficient service levels. As such, fee adjustments are a necessary component. As the economy begins to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, and hopefully soon, the Bureau will need to be at the ready with appropriate staffing levels to respond. If staff has been cut through either layoffs or are continually lost to private sector, it will have a substantial impact on the overall economic recovery of the city as a whole. All development and construction in Portland must go through the permitting process, including affordable housing projects and infrastructure maintenance and improvements. Nothing's essentially exempt. AFSCME feels fee changes among the cost savings measures and sacrifices already borne by the Bureau and its staff, as well as the request for one-time general fund support for which we have advocated, are crucial to preserving the operations of BDS long-term. AFSCME Local 189 supports the proposed fee changes and urges Council to vote in favor of them. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next individual, please, Keelan.
Next up, we have Rachel Whiteside.
Hi, Rachel.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Rachel Whiteside. I am union representative for Protect 17 members at the Bureau of Development Services. Protect 17 represents a wide range of classifications at the city. This includes the development services, project coordinators, and technicians who facilitate the issuance of permits large and small, our engineers who ensure building safety, city planners who enforce zoning regulations that maintain our vibrant commercial districts and walkable neighborhoods that Portland is so well known for, among others. We are here today to support our voice our strong support for BDS's proposed fee changes, and we're asking for your support as well. As you've heard, BDS staff and services are supported almost entirely through fees and charges for services. This is how they generate the revenue needed to maintain its staff. And like other businesses right now, BDS is facing annual cost inflation due to a wide variety of factors, including rising rents and remaining competitive with other employers. As you've also heard, BDS is currently experiencing lower cost recovery due to the impacts of COVID-19, but we're supporting these fee changes because we believe that the Bureau has really done their due diligence and been proactive in keeping costs down to the extent possible. Our members have also stepped up to take both voluntary and involuntary furloughs. Even before the city's safety net options were in place, we had members reducing work schedules to try and save money, to opt into early retirement packages And then, of course, we are disappointed and saddened to lose our non-represented colleagues who were laid off in March. I'd like to thank the mayor for the allocation or recommendation of much needed one-time funds in the proposed budget. But this is with the understanding that the fee changes that are before you today are still needed in order to maintain jobs. And when I say maintain jobs, I'm not just advocating for Protect 17 jobs at the city. This is jobs in our communities. Further layoffs will affect the Bureau's service levels, which in turn impacts the ability to get permits out the door, and time equals money for our development community and our housing community. And workers that are employed on those projects also face layoff when the city is not able to process projects in a timely manner. So we saw following the Great Recession that when the workforce is reduced at BDS, it has an impact on Portland's recovery. So to conclude, we're supportive of BDS's efforts so far, and we support the fee changes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Susanna Stanley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify. I'm Susanna Stanley. I'm a land use planner at McKinsey. I work on a lot of commercial and industrial projects, and I also do a lot of permitting. And I'm also on a couple of DRAC subcommittees, the Process Improvement and Technology Subcommittee and the NAOP BOMA group that has been working with Director Esau for the past several years. And I'm also on Commissioner Ryan's task force for improving permitting outcomes and timelines. One of my roles at McKinsey has been preparing a multi-city permit fee comparison. We've done some version of this for quite a few years at McKinsey, but lately it's been pretty robust. We've done retail, office, and warehouse, as well as a multifamily residential project. And so I'm very familiar with permit fees in the region. We actually do it for Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver areas. So 7 cities in each for most of those uses. And I hope it is reassuring for you to hear that over all the years I've done it, Portland is often the lowest or one of the lowest in the Portland metro area for fees overall, permit fees, system development charges, and land use review fees. Some of the fees that we see for Portland projects are much higher than in other cities, but some are a lot lower. And so it kind of averages out. We've also done an exercise looking at the residential project, hypothetical project for an affordable housing project where SDCs would be waived, which makes the total fees per square foot for that same project very small compared to other jurisdictions. So just a little bit of data analysis there for you. I do know from my work with the committees that I'm on that raising fees is one of the several tools that BDS will be using to improve service and meet cities' goals for development and economic growth and improving permitting in Portland. And I support the increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Keelan, does that complete public testimony?
It does, Mayor.
Very good, colleagues. This is a first reading. Anything else before I move it to second reading? Very good. Thanks, everyone. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next up, time certain 326.
Accept the State of Housing in Portland 2020 report.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Portland Housing Bureau has been publishing the annual State of Housing report for the last 6 years. The report provides local leaders and policymakers with the most comprehensive resource on housing and affordability in our city, offering us critical insights into who the housing market is serving and who is being left behind. As you will hear from the presentation today, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought unprecedented challenges, deepening our housing and houselessness crisis and highlighting race and income disparities that were already significant before the pandemic. In addition, changing market conditions in both the rental and home ownership markets due to COVID-19 are bringing significant changes to our city and residents. The full report can be found on the Portland Housing Bureau's website. Today, we are delighted to have Bimal Rajuvane. I'm sorry, let me get this right. Bimal Raj Vudari, Analysis and Project Manager for the State of Housing Report, and he will present an overall key findings of the report. Director Callahan and Matthew Scheipold will also be available to answer questions. It's really wonderful to have you here, Bimal, and please take it away.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Ryan, and fellow commissioners. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present the summary findings from our 2020 State of Housing in Portland report. Oh, yeah. For the record, my name is Bimal Rajbandari. I'm a data analyst with the Housing Bureau. Let me share my screen. Great. Well, thank you. Even though I'm presenting today, I'd like to mention that this is the work of the whole team. And in fact, everybody from the Portland Housing Bureau contributed in some significant way in its preparation. And today we have our director, Shannon Callahan, policy manager, Matthew Scheipold, and data analytics manager, Antoinette Pietka here. And I'm sure they'll be more than happy to answer any additional questions and clarifications. A little background on the genesis of the report. We started preparing this report, the State of Housing report, 6 years back, because the leadership at that point required that we present the most current and market-oriented data in the report as objective facts. And with subsequent leadership, it has gotten better as an annual publication. The report strives to provide stakeholders and policymakers with a comprehensive, like Commissioner Ryan mentioned, a comprehensive look at the City of Portland's housing market by geography, affordability by race and ethnicity, and by income. So today I'll be presenting some of the highlights from 2013 to 2018 ACS demographic data and 2019 housing data. And this is before the current COVID-19 crisis. And also the housing market and the PSP data from 2020 when the pandemic consumed all of us up. So I hope it gives us a good picture of where we were at and how we can get back in a better way. So one more thing is, like, every year we try to include a special section, and this year's special section is on the impact of the COVID on housing and beyond. So it's a little bit too premature to talk about the impact, but we just thought it'll be good to at least start the conversation about, like, and also presenting some of the observations. The report can be divided into, reports divided into 5 parts. The first part is pretty much introduction to the demographics and housing stock in the City of Portland. And part 2 gives the introduction to the housing market affordability, both rental as well as home ownership. Part 3 is city and neighborhood profiles. So the detailed information about the whole city and each of the neighborhood profiles. And part 4 and 5 is pretty much the city and housing bureau policies and programs and funding information. And for our study, we use this particular map of the neighborhood studied areas. So we have divided the City of Portland into 24 different neighborhoods, which sort of like corresponds roughly with City of Portland's traditional neighborhood. Think of each of these study area as a super tract, or like a combination of different census tracts, so that we can combine data and then be able to present the data in much more like we can lower the margin of error and be able to present the data that is much more valid. So that's the map of the neighborhood city areas. And the report contains a lot of information about what's happening, what has happened, and a lot of information about the City of Portland Housing Bureau's different policy and program details. But these are some of the key findings, even if you missed the other things. So one thing I would like to start is by saying that there's been a growth in population, wealth, median age, and diversity from 2013 to 2018. However, the persistent income disparities by housing tenure and race and ethnicity despite rising incomes overall. So income has risen, but at the same time, disparities have still stayed. And some of the impacts from the COVID-19 on the housing market, for the first time in a decade in the city of Portland, we are seeing that the asking rents are decreasing. And also we are seeing in the central city that asking rents are decreasing while the vacancy rates are at all-time high. So compared to the city of Portland, as well as the central city, you'll find that in East Portland, the vacancy rates are actually decreasing, while the rents are in fact slightly increasing. So it's a different pattern by different geography. And also you'll find that single-family home sales has been consistently stronger in 2020 than 2019, in spite of COVID. So last point I would like to mention is that the city and the Housing Bureau are having to play, or has played new roles in response to the economic impact of COVID-19. So it's a new role they're having to fulfill. Here's the data on the population. So the Portland continues to grow. With 640,000 people, we are the 26th populous city in the United States. During the 2013 and 2018 5-year period, Portland added close to 45,000 new residents at the annual growth rate of 1.5%. So young, educated people are still joining our city, but in a slower rate than before. So what was obvious was that Portland sort of has entered a period of stable growth in population and housing, as well, especially in the rental housing cost. During this period, the most of the increase were in the Northeast, Central City, and East Portland. So which three of these accounted for more than 50% increase in population. On the right side is a chart showing population by race and ethnicity. So this graph shows that the change in the population, the following groups have shown significant increase: the white, Asian, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, and Hispanic Latinx, and also those categorizing themselves as 2 or more races. But for the change for African American and Native Americans do not, however, show a statistically reliable change. And you have to realize that these 2 groups are historically undercounted. And the data we're looking at is actually a race alone data from the Census Bureau. So for the programming purposes, it is very important that we use community validated numbers, which we try to do at the Bureau. The next screen shows the median household income by race and ethnicity. And you will see that there's been a significant increase in income that occurred from 2013 to 2018. So in spite of overall increase in the median household income, for all the groups, the Portland's wealth is still unevenly distributed, and many of our historic residents are still struggling to make rent or to afford home ownership. And you'll see that even though the median income is increasing for all groups, there's a dramatic difference between the income for the white versus the communities of color. And also the data which I'm not presented here is if you look at the income by tenure, the homeowners in general have like more than double the income of renters on average. Next slide, it shows the rentership change from 2013 to 2018. So rentership in general has been increasing for the last 5 years. So we see that the rentership rates actually continue to increase for African Americans and whites. Whereas for the other groups, which is a new trend for Asian, Hawaiian Pacific, Hispanic Latinx, and Native American, the rentership in the last 5 years has actually gone down. Next slide, the home ownership rate is actually opposite of the rentership. So you can see the home ownership has been going down a little bit slowly. So for overall, and you'll see that again, as a reverse of rentership, the home ownership rates has gone down for the whites as well as for African American. But whereas it has gone up a little bit for Asian Americans and also for Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, Hispanic Latinx, and Native Americans. So you can see the both sides of rentership and home ownership rates. Next, we'll look at the multifamily permits. So we'll see that from 2017 to 2019, we still see the city as having permits and production data showing continuing activity. So in 2017, the multifamily permitting and production was set at a historic high of 6,000 permits and 8,500 units in production. So, but when it comes to 2018 and 19, the multifamily units production as well as the permits actually decreased. And we only looked at up to 2019. So I think 2020 has a completely different picture. So most of the permits in 2019 were mostly in interstate corridor, northwest, central city, and gateway neighborhoods. Next, we looked at the single family unit permits by neighborhood. So single family permits and production have remained sort of like very consistent over years. And they have not actually risen to the pre-recessionary level of 2007 and 8. So, but they have been pretty consistent. In 2019, there were 693 permits and 546 units produced. And most of the permits in 2019 were in Lens Foster, Interstate Corridor, and St. John's. One of the things we looked at in this report, which we try to emphasize, is looking at affordability by race and ethnicity. So first we look at the rental affordability. We looked at rental affordability based on their ability to pay at least 30% of their income for rent alone, so one isn't rent burdened. For your information, 49% of Portlanders are either cost burdened or extremely cost burdened. So we sort of like looked at which group in average can afford to rent average 2-bedroom apartments in various neighborhoods in Portland based on their median income. The following average groups can or cannot find place to rent in different areas of the Portland if you look at different groups. So if you look at the white households in general, on average, they can afford to rent pretty much anywhere besides the central city area. And it is not true for the Black household. So the average Black household cannot afford to rent pretty much anywhere in the city of Portland. We're talking about 2-bedroom affordability. Let's see, trying to make it a little bigger. And Latinx household can afford rent in East Portland. Native American households, okay, I skipped the slide. So this is the rental. So again, the households, they can afford rent pretty much everywhere except for Central City. Black households on average can afford to rent anywhere in the city of Portland. Latinx households can afford some more areas, and the Native American households can only afford to rent in East and farther northeast. And Pacific Islander households and Asian households have a little bit more neighborhoods they can afford to find. So when it comes to home ownership affordability, the situation is even starker. So you can see that even for the white households, there are only certain places on the east side of Portland that is affordable to them. And when it comes to Black household and Native American households, none of the neighborhoods are again affordable to them. We're talking about average households with average income. And Latinx household has few neighborhoods on the East Portland that they can afford. And Pacific Islanders has slightly one more neighborhood they can afford, and same with the Asian households. So affordability has affected different race and ethnicity groups differently. Next, we looked at the percent change in rent per year. And you can see that 2020 has been a tough year for the rental housing market. So this chart actually shows year-to-year percent rent change. And from 2015 to 2016 early, this is when the housing crisis began. And we can start to see the rent being stabilizing to a certain extent, 16, 17, 18. But in 2020, the rent actually decreased dramatically. So in 2020, the average rental unit charges were like $1,461 per month, which is $14 lower than 2019. So the rents decrease. And this is a chart showing the vacancy rates for Portland, this is the darker color in the middle, and Central City, the top one, and East Portland. So in Portland—
Excuse me, Mayor, could we go back, please?
Okay,
yeah, Commissioner Hardesty.
All right, thank you. Could we go back one slide, please?
Okay.
This chart reflects that this enormous increase in rent that started in 2014 through 2016.
Mm-hmm.
What's your analysis about the beginning of the reduction in rent based on that sharp increase that happened in a very short period of time?
Oh, this is mostly because of what the city did. City declared the housing emergency. So there was a better partnership between the city as well as the developers made efforts to come up with more production. So there are more units came into production, which actually decreased the rent over time.
And so you're alleging that the decrease in rent was because there was more production as compared to a market correction because the rent was exorbitant and it went up so high so quickly?
Well, I can only assume the market plays a certain role. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I challenge that assumption because I think there's a lot of factors. I wouldn't want to assume that because we produce more, because we produce a lot that people can't afford to live in the city of Portland. So I don't know how that was helpful.
Commissioner, Bimal, Commissioner, if I may, for the record, Matthew Schaubold with the Portland Housing Bureau. In addition to some of that context, we also in Portland, we have seen, because of the significant amount of production at the higher end of the market, similar to comparison jurisdictions, that we've seen indications of oversupply or the supply exceeding demand, and which is also why, in addition to the COVID impacts, we're seeing increases in vacancy rates, or in 2020, we were seeing increases in vacancy rates and concession rates and flattening and falling rents as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. I just didn't want to leave it with the market somehow did something good in this process. So thank you.
No, I fully agree with you, Commissioner Hardesty. And that's why we try to present our data in a very objective manner without making any kind of subjective judgment. And I think there's definitely more to the market, more to the data than just looking at the supply and demand. So thank you. Okay, I think I was looking at the vacancy rates. So again, here you'll see that in Portland, on average, the vacancy rates have increased from 6.4% to 11.1% in 2020. So, and also there's the vacancy rates vary by geography, with vacancies in the central city increasing much more dramatically whereas the vacancies actually on the East Portland is decreasing. And that's also sort of like reflected in the asking rate. So for on average, the asking rate has been increasing for City of Portland almost close to 2019, but you start seeing a decrease in the asking rates, especially into 2020. And that is even the decrease is even much more strongly seen in the central city. And whereas if you look at the East Portland, as well as, which is also true for some of the suburban areas in the Metro Portland, you'll see that some of the actually asking rents are going up. And the vacancy, so the increased vacancies are reflected in the rent concessions. East Portland and other suburban areas do not offer very small or almost no concessions. Whereas the Portland, as well as the central city, the concessions have increased each quarter of 2020. So, yeah, sorry. Mayor, were you saying something?
Commissioner. Sorry, I have a quick question. Mengus Maps here. Can you just define what rent concession means here and also tell me how you collect this data?
This data is collected from a company called CoStar that has a market level data that they survey all the multifamily apartments in Portland as well as other metropolitan areas. So concession rates are, you have asking rates, and then concession rates are people where they are given discounts, probably like 1 month rent off, 2 months, 3 months rent off. So when you consider those things, those are part of rent concessions.
Okay, thank you.
And then the CoStar 2020 reported that the downtown multifamily landlords slashed rents by 7% since March by providing various discounts and offers. And nationally, you're starting to see or hear stories about landlords offering 1 to 3 months of free rent. So I don't know how long that will go, but that's you starting to hear about it. Next, we sort of like looked at the impact.
Commissioner Hurst, you had a question on that.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Before you move on, sorry, this is, it's a lot of information that we're absorbing this morning. So in 2019, we see this drastic reduction in concessions in the central city. And then we saw a rapid increase in the middle of 2019. And again, for me, it appears that because the rent was so high, the asking rent was so high, in order to get anybody in those buildings, these incentives were necessary. Unlike East Portland, where we're talking an older housing stock, right? So it doesn't feel like you're comparing apples to apples when you're comparing brand new, fancy, empty buildings to older housing stock. So I'm just trying to figure out, is that the right measurement that you're measuring? Because there are no incentives because there's no new buildings that people are moving into. That in East Portland. So I'm just curious as to
at this point
and why. What does this tell us?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Commissioner Hardesty. It's a little bit too...
if I may, and
thank
you for, Commissioner, if I may, and thank you for, sorry, I think I had a bad connection issue. If I may, Commissioner, what we're trying to illustrate in the rent concession rates and the vacancy rates and rent changes between 2019 and 2020 is the kind of either emergence or reinforcement of a little bit of a bifurcated housing market between the central city area and surrounding neighborhoods in East Portland. In part because there has been a narrative around many jurisdictions around the country of increases in vacancy rates and falling rents, which is accurate, particularly in some of the newer stock of housing. But we also wanted to make sure that we were painting an accurate picture of other neighborhoods that where communities in those neighborhoods are not experiencing this same idea of falling rents and a lot of vacancy and a lot of concessions, but rather where vacancies are flat, rents are flat, or maybe even increasing. And it really is I personally think it's been exacerbated by the pandemic,
Right.
but this bifurcation between the submarkets in Portland.
No, I think that's a good point, especially when we know nationally, folks with choices are moving into the suburbs now and away from major cities due to, some are saying due to COVID and the reality of they can work anywhere versus living close to where they work. So I appreciate that. I was just trying to get to why this measurement, but it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Yeah, it's a little bit premature to come up with like explanations. We have anecdotal stories about people leaving the central city, going to suburbs, and that probably has affected, but I think we can't make that statement on our part at this point as a data analyst. But given this year, I think by the end of 2021, we'll fully understand the real demographic impact as well as the housing impact. So please look forward to the New Year's new report. Thank you. We looked at, again, pretty much the impact of COVID in housing. This is the data I already presented earlier. So this is just the snapshots of data in 2 time period, one in December 2019 and December 2020. And you can see that the vacancy actually went up, but for say Central City as well as Portland, and I went down for the East Portland. And on the other side, if you look at the asking rent in Portland, you'll see that both for Central City and Portland, it decreased, whereas it increased for East Portland. And this is more of an observation, and it should not be taken as a causation. So we'll know more as we get more data, we'll know more about the impact. So housing, residential home sales has been strong. So it was strong before the COVID hit, and it has still stayed pretty strongly for a whole period of 2020, as even in 2021. So the lower graph actually shows data for 2019, and the upper graph is for 2020. And you can see that the home sale price has stayed very high overall for the whole year, except for 1 month in May, where we had just gotten into the COVID pandemic area. But now after that, it has still gone all the way up, and there's a dramatic difference between what was seen in December of 2020 and 2019. So the both rental market as well as home sales has behaved soon in a different way. We'll have to, I think this, we'll have a lot of information like Commissioner Hardesty says, this was a very short period of time to like really dig into the details, but there's a lot of information in the report, and please feel free to ask us questions, and we'll be more than happy to provide any additional answers as needed. And at this point, I would like to invite our director, Shannon Callahan, to talk briefly about the housing development since the state of emergency, and also about to talk a little bit more about what the city and the PSP is doing in response to the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Bimal. Mayor and Commissioner Shannon Callahan of the Portland Housing Bureau. As Bimal mentioned, in addition to the comprehensive data on the housing market that you've seen today and the individual neighborhood profiles, the report also serves as the Bureau's annual report on our progress of our major initiatives, strategies, and policies. And while we're not planning to review all of the 170 pages of the report with you this afternoon, we just wanted, or this morning, we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that and that the public was aware of the comprehensive data and reporting contained in the report. I realize that viewing an online 170-page document can be rather challenging, so we want to make sure that we give you hard copies of these reports delivered to your homes and make sure your staff also has these, because they do, the report contains a lot of important data. And I just wanted to basically mention what our continued focus is going to be through 2021. So obviously we will continue to focus on the creation of new affordable housing opportunities for Portlanders. And the map in front of you contains information on what the Bureau has been able to accomplish with our community partners since the state of emergency declaration in 2015. And we'll continue to work on those projects in our pipeline as well. We just opened a Metro bond solicitation just 2 weeks ago, and we'll be selecting new projects through the summer and fall to move forward. And then a big part of our work in 2021 will continue to be stabilizing Portlanders in the housing where they're currently residing. As you know, the eviction moratorium, state eviction moratorium is slated to be removed at the end of June. And we are working with all of our community-based and jurisdictional partners to ensure that rent assistance is available. We are also hopeful that the state will pass a bill this session, which will extend the repayment period for rent arrears until February of 2022. That will be an essential part of ensuring that families don't get evicted from their housing. So that actually does conclude our presentation. We hope to share with you hard copies at your residence soon. And Matthew, Bamal, and Antoinette and I are here to answer any questions you may have. And I just wanted to express my deep gratitude to Bamal and the entire data team for creating this extremely comprehensive report. It is a lot of work, and just wanted to thank and acknowledge Bamal for his leadership on this project.
Thank you, Director Callahan. Colleagues, any further questions, or I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Mapps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks staff for that really excellent presentation. This came up a little bit in our during the presentation. But I think the patterns we see in the central city represent an interesting paradox, and I want to kind of create some space to have staff at least speculate on what's going on here. The puzzling piece is what we see: rents decreasing and vacancy rates going up, which seems counterintuitive. As rents decrease, we should see vacancy rates go down. Do we have any intuition about what explains this? And during your presentation, I also noticed that multifamily permits in the central city seem to be kind of high, so we're building there. So maybe it explains the rent decrease. But I'm not quite sure. Like, why don't people want to live in the central city? I also noticed that I think Commissioner Hersey is right. The baseline rents in the central city seem to be kind of high, so maybe some of that's there. Does anyone want to speculate around that or offer some insight into this paradox?
Commissioner, I think there's a variety of factors, and I'd welcome my team's input on this as well. I think it's been a hard time period for central cities generally. And I think that people have left units in the central city who were renting. I think there is also a mismatch between the luxury units and the people who can afford to live in those units. I think some of what you've seen when you see the development projects coming through related to the inclusionary housing tax, you'll note that the market is building very small units and not a lot of bedrooms. And frankly, that's not what Portlanders need. And I think increasingly, and I am speculating a bit here, but increasingly during the time of the pandemic where people are working and living from home, if they could get more space, if they could afford to move out of the central city and to get into more space, I think a rational family would have done that at that time. And so that is pure speculation to some extent, but I think it's also borne out in some of the data that we see time after time. So I'd also welcome my team's comments on that as well.
Yeah, just briefly, Commissioner, we track markets around the country as well that are comparable markets to Portland. And I think if you look at about the 16 markets we looked at that are similar to Portland, both in terms of the makeup of the city and the city's economy and the kind of permitting volume as a portion of the overall stock. half of them are showing similar trends as Portland and the other half are showing the opposite trends. Our multifamily development does exist in a national and global capital marketplace. And so I think you will find that the development cycles are different, city to city. And so we trend similar to some cities where permitting is decreasing and differently from others where permitting is increasing. And I think what you are seeing in Portland specifically, if you're asking for speculation, is, again, in consideration of the COVID impacts, I think you're also seeing Portland moving from a period of time with a significant amount of multifamily development, where Portland was one of the top destinations for capital markets. And as such, we saw a lot of supply coming online, and we're naturally going to see rents flatten or start to fall and vacancies increase until demand exceeds supply and multifamily development begins to pick up again. So that's my perspective.
Commissioner Hurst.
Thank you, Mayor. And first, let me just say thank you so much for this very comprehensive report, Bimal, and the rest of the staff at the Housing Bureau. It's problematic to say that Black people cannot afford to live in the city of Portland, based on the data that you have. I don't even know what to do with that information, but I am curious to know what the Housing Bureau is doing with that information and addressing their upcoming work and priorities. The other thing is there seems to be, when we talk about the houseless community, there's very little in this report that actually reflects what the lived experience is of our houseless community members. And it seems to be a very tiny focus on addressing the continued increase of folks on our street. So there's a lot about stabilizing people in the homes that they're in now, which of course I support. But there's almost no thinking about what are we doing about the massive increase of folks on our street, and how are we getting them into a process whereby they have some stability as we're waiting to build housing people can afford to live in. So those are the two big things that kind of pop out at me at the moment. And I'm not quite sure where we go with that, with this report from here. We adopt it, then what?
Well, thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. I'd like to say that I think, one of the important things about surfacing the data regarding housing stability by race is so that we can make changes. And since we have been tracking this data and really publicly reporting it, it's affected the way that it's affected who we fund and how we fund for the development and creation of new affordable housing, and making sure that we put priority access for those communities who are not getting served by the market. I think we strive with each time we select projects to get better and better about this. And what we do know is that some affordable housing providers are better able to serve and bring in BIPOC community members. And, it's an important part of how we structure our funding, and who we select and the projects that we select is about who they're going to serve. And so that's part of how we react to this. But I also think there's a variety of different ways that, of course, council can react to some of this data as well. And I think on the second part of your question, we do report on the data from the Joint Office because of the Joint Office's connection to the Portland Housing Bureau. But you're right, we do not and have not done a comprehensive approach on what the houseless community is experiencing through the State of Housing report. So I appreciate that comment, and we'll take it under consideration for our next report.
I also noticed that we're losing African Americans in Alberta and interstate area, while we have programs that are very specifically tailored to get African Americans back in those communities. What are we doing wrong?
Commissioner, I would love for you to point out, we've the neighborhood makeup and change of North and Northeast has been rather significant for decades. I think mostly starting really truly in, obviously there were actions that the city took in the 70s, but in the 90s, we really started to see a shift.
2000 was the biggest shift of homeowners that were African-American out of inner Northeast. So, but that trend continues today.
We do target, as you know, all of the funding through the preference policy in North and Northeast that we have available. I think one of the other important things that we've done over the last year is the new funding for retention of longtime homeowners. One of the things we've heard over and over is how hard it is when someone passes away or to retain that generational wealth. So we started a pilot program just last year at the urging of our North and Northeast Oversight Committee that has proved somewhat successful in outreach. And I think some of that for us is what more can we do? I think one of the things we have to be really cautious of right now is predatory purchasing and predatory buying. As you saw from this data, and obviously I think it's clear to anyone who's watching the home ownership market, homes are escalating at a very rapid rate. We have not even been able to grapple yet with how this is going to affect our home ownership programs in general. But we do know that down payment assistance is becoming a harder and harder tool, even when we're providing $100,000 in down payment assistance. And so I think one of the shifts that we're going to need to make is actually, if we're going to try to continue to create homeowners, and especially BIPOC homeowners in Portland, we're going to have to build. And we're going to have to probably invest quite a bit of money, but I think that's the appropriate thing to do. So we will need to shift the way that we deliver services at the Housing Bureau based on some of what's happening in the changing market. I hope that answered your question, Commissioner.
I'm going to stop because I could ask 20 more questions, but I assume this is our first conversation about this report. And we will be referring back to this report at a later date. So thank you very much. A lot of good information, a lot of very troubling information in this report. And so I look forward to what's next. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty, Commissioner Mapps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since I know we have a lot of work to do, so instead of asking you a question, I'll just make a statement. Based on the data that you showed me, it seems profoundly problematic that there's no neighborhood in Portland where the average Black family can afford to rent or own. That strikes me as being sort of beyond a crisis point. I appreciate your presentation because it gave us a sense of how we're responding to COVID. At some point, I'd like to have a conversation about how the Bureau's plans and spending reflects just the stark reality that Black people have been priced out of the city. And I won't ask us to, unless you want to immediately comment on that, which I'm not necessarily asking you to do, but I do hope we can have that conversation and do some planning around that in the near future.
I would just like to say, Commissioner Mapps, thank you for that observation and that question. And it is very troubling to us at the Housing Bureau as well. And we're happy to engage with a further dialogue with you about that. And I appreciate your comments.
Very good. Colleagues, I'll entertain a motion.
Yes. Colleagues, I move to accept the State of Housing in Portland 2020 report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ryan, a second from Commissioner Hardesty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Housing Bureau staff, for putting this together. Bimal, especially, I want to acknowledge your skill sets and being so objective and crisp and even dispassionately honest while you were going through the data. That's a real skill set. And then to have Matthew weigh in with some great context. I think what I want to pause and just say is getting the truth out about all of this information, especially the fact that there's not one neighborhood that's affordable to the demographic in the report, African American, is troubling. And it's great to have it so crisp and clear. And so as stated by my colleagues, now it's what are we going to do about it? And I want to acknowledge Director Callahan's leadership and especially the dialogue I'm having with the North and Northeast volunteers on the coalition. I know there's great work going on, and I look forward to making sure that we continue to pivot and target where the greatest need is. This year's report gives data to what many of us have noticed in our day-to-day lives and makes it very real. Yes, we continue to grow. We're the 6th largest city in the West Coast. We're no longer a big town, and albeit it has slowed down a bit. Young, educated people continue to join our city, but overall, wealth continues to be unevenly distributed, and many of our historic residents are struggling to make rent and find affordable, stable housing. And while the last 2 years before the pandemic saw historic housing production levels, we still don't have enough affordable homes for everyone. The reporting on the market conditions this year gives an early insight on the impact of the pandemic on housing and houselessness, but I want to acknowledge how hard you worked to make sure that you told that story. Thank you. And the impact on BIPOC and low-income Portlanders is grim. The report also shows that the Housing Bureau, in partnership with others, has kept up with the production of affordable homes through the inclusionary program, the housing program, the Northeast Housing Strategy, and Portland and Metro housing bonds. Thank you, voters. While there is certainly more to be done in providing every Portlander with a safe, affordable place to call home, the Bureau and the city has not been idle. In addition to pursuing the strategic initiatives, the city and the bureaus have dealt with the impacts of COVID head-on by developing rent and household assistance programs with monies available from the city, the county, state, and federal governments. All of these programs have led with a racial equity focus to ensure critical assistance while reaching Black, Indigenous people of color who have been hardest hit by the pandemic. With eviction and foreclosure moratoriums ending, thank you, Director Callahan, for your leadership on this. I know we talk about it weekly. Back rent is our mounting, and we are at a critical juncture. We're rooting for the Senate bill to pass. In the months to come, we will have to leverage community partnerships and develop innovative policies and programs to address the challenges brought on by the pandemic. Thank you again, Housing Bureau staff. This was definitely a big group effort for your hard work. And thank you for delivering. I know I got my copy last night. Sorry, the rest of you don't have it yet. I'm glad to hear that you're going to be delivering them soon. And I vote aye.
Hardesty.
First, let me thank the Housing Bureau and Bermal. I love data, folks, because it's just the data, ma'am, nothing but the data. And I certainly appreciate having the give and take with folks who are really focused on data collection and doing the analysis. I also want to say this report is very disturbing to me. When I look at these reports, I look at interstate as a community and see that though we've increased the Latinx population, the poverty rate has almost doubled with the increase in the Latinx population. When you look at Alberta, we continue to lose significant numbers of African Americans, and the poverty rate continues to soar. The fact that Native Americans can almost live nowhere in the city of Portland also and have almost no opportunity for home ownership is a huge concern of mine. None of this information is new to us. We know how past housing policy has had a racially disparate impact on how housing has been built and how housing stock has been controlled in the city of Portland. So no big surprises as far as what the outcome has been. What's troubling for me is even with efforts focused on increasing opportunity for Black, Latinx, Native American folks, we are still failing miserably in reaching that goal. And I hope that it's not another year before we come back to this conversation and really unpack the fact that we are failing our BIPOC communities over and over and over again. So we can say good things, we can develop good programs, but if the outcomes don't change, then we really haven't actually done much. I look forward to working with Commissioner Ryan with the Housing Bureau and really helping us think creatively about how we're not here next year looking at the same kind of numbers and scratching our head about why nothing changed. We must do better, and we must be more intentional about how we do better. I vote aye. I look forward to the work ahead.
Apps.
I want to thank staff for that excellent presentation and this excellent report. Like my colleagues on council, I share concern about the broader trends and patterns that we see in our in Portland's housing market. I think it's important that we work together to make sure that Portland's housing market works for all Portlanders, including and especially Portlanders of color. I look forward to working with you on that important issue in the future. And that's one of the reasons why I vote aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank Bimal and the Portland Housing Bureau again for compiling this report and this presentation. This is a lot of hard information to take in, but I also believe it underscores the urgency that we all feel right now. In my last job, I saw the impact of the housing crisis up front and in real time through our rent assistance work, and how this unaffordability is pushing people into housing instability and houselessness or out of Portland entirely. And this data makes a clear case for the need for that affordability and the need to access home ownership by Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and other people of color. It's really painful to see the deep unaffordability in most or all parts of the city. That's something that's been commented on by my colleagues. And also that the median cost of a house is well above $400,000. And that amount is completely inaccessible for low-income Portlanders. And I think particularly of Black Portlanders who've been robbed of their opportunity to build intergenerational wealth in this city. We have a lot of challenges ahead that we've all identified that will require a lot of innovation and urgency. And I'm glad that we're all aligned as a council and committed to working with the bureaus and the community partners to do just that. So I just want to, again, thank Bimal and PHB for the presentation and for keeping this present for us as we enter this next critical phase in the housing crisis coming out of the pandemic. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, I want to underscore what several of my colleagues have already said. First of all, this is not new. This is not new data. We received similar data last year, similar data the year before that. So what we're seeing is a continued and even a strengthening trend towards a lack of affordability. And one cannot look at this report and not acknowledge that its conclusions are devastating. What we're seeing, as Commissioner Rubio just pointed out, is that there is a growing disconnect between specific segments of our community and the primary means by which families generate intergenerational wealth. And so the consequences of this trend, which started several years ago, are potentially going to be with us economically. By us, I mean specifically those segments of our community that are excluded from home ownership. That loss of intergenerational wealth will be felt for potentially decades. And so the word urgency once again comes to mind, but I also want to put a reality check in front of us. We are dealing not just with the Portland Housing Bureau's contributions to the overall marketplace, which, to be blunt, are minimal when compared to the overall size of the market. There are large market forces here, and while I appreciate that Director Callahan said it will take more money and more resource, I think we need to have a objective, steely, non-emotional analysis of what that actually means. And as you know, colleagues, the Housing Bureau is not coming into deeper resources going forward. We're going to be struggling with the funding for both the Housing Bureau as well as our Economic Development Agency, and having some really serious conversations going forward about the future of those two bureaus in the lineup of the city's bureaus. And so there's probably no way we could solve this problem solely through the levers that the Housing Bureau has at its disposal. We also have to talk about access to employment. We have to talk about income disparity. We have to talk about skills development, human resource development. We have to talk about education. All of those things are linked to this question of affordability, as is the current supply issue. I applaud Commissioner Ryan and the Housing Bureau and the Bureau of Development Services and our other permitting bureaus that are looking at ways to reduce the time, the cost, and the hassle factor associated with building particularly lower income or entry level housing in our community. But I also want to acknowledge something that was said in the report, in the presentation, and it garnered only one sentence of the presentation, which is those costs associated with permitting and system development charges represent a very small fraction of the overall cost of development in this city. So while they get disproportionate news coverage and a lot of attention, because those are the government's contributions to the cost of housing, that's not the only thing that's not the only consideration. So there's a lot of things we need to do here. And then Shannon, I'm just going to make the same appeal that I made last year at this time. Could we please reserve more than 30 minutes on the official docket for this? We always put it for 30 minutes, and it's never a 30-minute presentation, and it deserves more than a 30-minute presentation. So can we just try and put in our notes for next year that this will be on the docket for at least an hour, just so we get, and I'm telling all of our bureau directors, please, let's be realistic about the times that we are associating with our council agendas, because we are routinely far more interested in the reports than the bureaus think we're going to be. So there you have it. Excellent report in terms of the information and the clarity of the information. Well presented. Thank you to our presenters. Great questions from my colleagues, and I think thoughtful responses to those questions. This was time extremely well spent. And as Commissioner Hardesty said, now the question is, what are we going to do with it? And that really is the key question going forward. I vote aye, the report is accepted, and thank you for that. With that, we'll move back to the regular agenda. If I can find my place, we're at 3:40. Given the time, and since this is one of my items, I will ask that we speed this up to the degree that we can reasonably do so and still have a thorough enough presentation. Item 340, please.
Accept bid of Landis and Landis Construction LLC for the Southwest Capitol Highway, Southwest Taylor's Ferry Road to Southwest Garden Home Road project for $13,955,066.
Colleagues, in summary, this is a procurement report for a joint Portland Bureau of Transportation, Bureau of Environmental Services, and Portland Water Bureau project that will install pedestrian, bicycle, stormwater management, and water main improvements on a section of the Southwest Capitol Highway. I'm not sure who's presenting, so whoever's presenting, feel free to jump in right about now.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Kathleen Brenes-Murra, the Interim Chief Procurement Officer, and I am here to recommend authorization to enter into a contract with Landis and Landis Construction for the Southwest Capitol Highway, Southwest Taylor's Ferry Road to Southwest Garden Home Road project. On October 21st of 2020, Council authorized procurement services to solicit the project, and the engineer's estimate was $18.5 million with a high confidence level. Procurement Services issued an invitation to bid, and bids were opened on March 30th, and 4 bids were received. Landis and Landis Construction submitted the lowest responsive bid in the amount of $13,955,066, which is approximately 25% under the engineer's estimate. The city's aspirational 20% subcontractor supplier utilization goal applied. Landis and Landis has committed to subcontract 20.79% to firms certified by the state's Certification Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity, as identified in the report before you. They're self-performing 55.22% of the work and subcontracting the remaining 23.99% to non-certified firms. Landis & Landis Construction is in full compliance with all city contracting requirements, and I here recommend that council accept this report and authorize execution of the contract. If there are any questions about the procurement process, I'm happy to answer those. Also in attendance are the project managers, Stephen Sigathy and Lisa Mashinsky, and also a representative from Landis & Landis, should there be questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty has questions.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kathleen, for that presentation. I guess for me, I'm happy to see this multi-bureau project move forward. And though we are achieving our goals around COVID certified firms, I did notice that we still, with 3 departments involved in this bid, still have very few representation from contractors of color. And I guess my question is, there's nothing that prohibits contractors of color or women contractors from being utilized outside of the COVID process, is there?
There is not, no.
Yet I've never seen a firm managed by people of color or women in the non-COVID section. Is there a reason why we only talk to people of color and women when it's based on COVID as compared to the totality of the contract?
The way that our subcontractor equity program is currently structured, where we're counting the participation of firms through their certification with the state's office, it's the reason why you're seeing that when we're reporting out, we focus on their certification, but it does not, if there were firms of color, contractors of color that were participating or being subcontracted, we would include that were not certified, we would make mention of that.
And would we encourage that as a way to actually expand opportunity for folks in subcontract opportunities?
We do encourage that, and we are looking at ways of changing our program and our policy to be able to afford more opportunities for contractors of color that are not certified.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen, for that presentation. Just a real quick question. Anytime there's an overestimation that's over 20%, I'm just always curious on why that is. It seems like there's a pattern of late where that happens, and I want to get just more insight into that.
And Stephen, if you wouldn't mind taking that question. Stephen is the capital project manager, and they would have reviewed the bids for this project.
Sure, I could posit briefly about that. Steve Sigathy, Capital Project Manager at PBOD. We do see cyclical nature to construction bids and prices in the low bid market through the years. As recently as a few years ago, bids were coming in significantly above our estimates. Now they are coming in pretty consistently lower. In fact, 3 of the 4 bids were below our engineer's estimate on this project. So I think it's a cyclical nature that follows the larger economy. Hearing earlier council items here about the residential and commercial markets not doing as much may have something to do with it. And so contractors look to government infrastructure projects. So that's a little bit of a speculation, but that's kind of what we've been seeing over the years, is that it kind of ebbs and flows. It goes up and down.
Thank you, Steve. I know from my past experience around materials, sometimes whether it's steel or whatever, the fluctuation in the market. And I think for us, we just want to make sure that our, the labor cost we're doing living wages. And so sometimes that's what one wonders, if the speculation is connected to that. So you would say it's more connected to the materials that fluctuate in the marketplace and the demand.
I would say that that is true, and we we're required, contractors are required to pay prevailing wage on all of our projects. So
Good.
That is a constant.
Okay, sounds good. I think I'm getting a little more insight with the summary. We'll have to look into the fluctuations in market for the supply of the goods. Thanks.
Thank you.
That looks like that concludes questions. I'll entertain a motion.
I move we adopt the report as presented.
Thanks, Commissioner Hardesty. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Ryan seconds. Keelan, please call the roll.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
I believe that all of us are committed to actually walking our talk when it comes to ensuring that we make these opportunities available for minority and women-owned firms. We've been trying to do this for a long, long time. And I hope that as this project moves forward, we will look for opportunities to engage more contractors, owners that are led by communities of color and women contractors. We can't continue to aspire and not achieve our goals. I vote aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The report's accepted. Next item, 341, please.
authorize a competitive solicitation and execution of price agreements in support of the Bureau of Transportation Capital Improvement Program in amount up to $54 million.
Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner, you're muted. Commissioner, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I am just going to turn this over to my trusty colleagues at the Bureau of Transportation. I think we're going to start with Eva.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners. My name is Eva Hunsinger, and I'm from the Portland Bureau of Transportation. With me in this presentation to you are Carrie Waters, who is the PBOT Contract Equity Coordinator, and Kathleen Brennis Morua, the city's Chief Procurement Officer. Together, Procurement and PBOT are excited to bring this ordinance to you for your support and sponsorship. Passage of this ordinance provides us with the on-call engineering resources we need to deliver PBOT's capital improvement program, and it provides more opportunities for firms certified by the Oregon Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity. We call these firms COBID, not COVID, but COBID firms. They include disadvantaged business enterprises, minority-owned business enterprises, women-owned business enterprises, service-disabled veteran business enterprises, and emerging small businesses. The proposed legislation does not change any current city policies and does not change our appropriations. The citywide aspirational target is 20% contract value performed by COVID certified firms. We are upping the ante here for these professional service contracts by raising the minimum aspirational equity goal for larger contracts to that of 30%. It also builds opportunities for smaller consultants to build capacity as a prime through our smaller size solicitation. PBOT manages roads, bridges, sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails throughout the city. We help Portlanders get from place to place. Our strategic plan is based on three primary goals: safety, moving people and goods, and asset management. The cornerstone of our work is our commitment to transportation justice, which calls us to further advance equity and provide more opportunities in our contracting, which is exactly what this ordinance does. Next slide, please. This is an emergency ordinance because we need this additional on-call capacity for street design, traffic signals, and street lighting professional technical services to keep PBOT's capital improvement program on track. Now, Carrie Waters will provide to you an overview of our contract equity performance and how this solicitation will bring further contracting opportunities in support of PBOT's capital improvement program. So Carrie, if you'd please take it from here.
Thank you so much, Eva, for your leadership, and thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for the opportunity to share about this exciting project. For the record, my name is Carrie Waters, and I serve as PBOT's Contract Equity Coordinator. So also, as Eva mentioned, the city upholds an aspirational subconsultant equity goal of 20% of all contract dollars within our professional services contracts to go to COVID certified firms. At PBOT, we strive for higher, and we have found that we can effectively increase our expectations to a minimum aspirational subconsultant equity goal of 30%, which we have established as a proven model that we have applied to these contracts as well. So over the past 4 years, PBOT implemented this as a pilot approach, as we call it, to advance contract equity within this realm. So the prime consultants provide a declaration of understanding to establish a shared commitment to subconsultant equity as a means towards capacity building to grow the diversity within the marketplace. Using this approach, we have reached 29% of COVID participation as compared to our other non-pilot PTE contracts using the qualifications-based selection solicitation model that we're applying here. I will also highlight that we recognize the importance of not only analyzing COVID data alone. So you'll note that we have also included an analysis on the next slide. Sorry, whenever we're ready. Thank you. An analysis of BIPOC firm participation as well as women-owned and operated firms on the left side of this slide. So we're very excited about how our figures have doubled for both women and BIPOC firms, but we still realize that we still have a lot of work to do to ensure racial diversity within that BIPOC umbrella. So we look forward to assessing our achievements so we can continue to apply these lessons learned to our other non-pilot contracts so that we can increase our investment for contract equity across the Bureau. Kathleen Brenes-Marua, who is also here today, can attest to how this PBOT model for professional services contracting now serves as a flagship applied by the Bureau of Environmental Services and other bureaus throughout the city.
Kathleen, if I could stop you before you transition over, Mayor, if I may, I just want to really highlight that the great work that PBOT is doing about really tracking this kind of information and holding ourselves accountable to those outcomes. This is really, really impressive. And I just want to take a moment because I am always the most critical of contracts and who benefits and who doesn't. And it's not just because you're my bureau, but it's because you've done a great job and continue to do a great job. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hardesty. We really appreciate your support. So furthermore, these two solicitations provide opportunities for large and small-sized firms as an opportunity to grow capacity for those smaller firms that don't have experience with us as a prime. So we focus primarily here on the subconsultant equity program that we will continue to apply to these large contracts. But when I heard that this solicitation was happening, I immediately thought, how can we grow capacity beyond the direct contracting scale that we currently have that allows for us to direct contract with COVID certified firms for up to 150,000? That's a big gap between 150,000 and $5 million contracts. So we have created this smaller solicitation as well, and we'll spend a lot of time assessing how we can continue to break down barriers and build this as a space to grow that prime capacity. So I know that we would also be very happy to report back to Council on the COVID performance, disaggregating race and gender participation, of course. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kathleen to see if she has anything to add. And if not, we'll hand it back to Eva.
Yeah, I just want to say that Procurement Services is supportive of moving forward with these price agreements. PBOT came to Procurement Services 4 or 5 years ago with this model that they wanted to pilot, and it has, they have achieved so much success that Procurement Services is actually adopting this model for all price agreements citywide, where we can get contractors, consultants, commitment upfront, and statements that they will do everything that they can to maximize participation. BES has adopted this model as well, and is also experiencing similar success with their engineering services price agreements. Eva?
Thank you both.
Can I ask you a quick question before you move on? I'm curious. I noticed that with African-American males and with Native American males, there were no contracts in the pilot and very minimal in the non-pilot. That seems to be an area that we could improve a lot.
Agreed. And I will mention that I have been exploring opportunities for direct contracting with a couple of firms in particular, TCC Engineers, which is Black male owned, and Akana Engineering, which is Native American male owned. We know that there's interest there. We know that there are even more firms that are out there. So we want to make sure that we're increasing our reach. We engage with the trade associations locally and work with the COVID database. But as you have so astutely pointed out, Commissioner Hardesty, we know that there are many more firms that aren't necessarily COVID certified that would like to do work with the city. So we're going to continue to do a big push of outreach once we've received this authorization and before we issue the solicitation and get it out on the streets so that we can continue to build that participation and fill in those gaps.
Thank you.
So that concludes the formal part of our presentation. Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, did you have any other questions of us?
Very good. Colleagues, any questions? If not, we can also see if there is public testimony.
No one signed up for this item, Mayor.
All right, very good. This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Ryan?
Yes, thank you, Eva, Carrie, and Kathleen. That was a great presentation. It's a great example of how to operationalize COVID to get results and the transparency which Commissioner Hardesty acknowledged that you could really shine the light on where the gaps are, and which was done with African American males and Native American males. So just really good practice. I appreciate it. I vote aye.
Thank you.
Hardesty?
I want to again thank PBOT and the very able Carrie Waters for her great work in leading this effort. Eva, thank you so much for your incredibly good work. This is an excellent model. It's a way to hold ourselves accountable. And just so my colleagues know, I don't let my bureaus off the hook any more than I let your bureaus off the hook. So I'm happy to vote aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Rubio?
I want to thank Eva, Carrie, and Kathleen, and Commissioner Hardesty and PBOT for this really great work and for setting that expectation very high for all of us to look at. I'm also really excited about the possibility of this new model and what it will mean for the rest of the city. I'm very eager to learn more about it. I vote aye.
Wheeler?
This is great. Happy to support it. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you all for your hard work on this. Next up, 342, please. Regular agenda.
Thank you.
Authorize a 5-year joint development agreement with Pierce Manufacturing, Inc. for a reduced carbon emissions fire apparatus not to exceed $837,875.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a awkward start on this issue last week, but I'm very happy to turn this over to Bill Goforth and Jay Juno to present this to the council. It is my hope that everybody had their questions answered between last week and this week, so we expect a brief presentation today. Take it away, Bill.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, and good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and council members. Thank you for allowing us to present again today. My name is Bill Goforth, Portland Fire and Rescue's Logistics Deputy Chief. With me is Senior Business Operations Manager Jay Glow and Pierce Manufacturing Western Regional Vice President Mark Flutico. We're here today to present the ordinance requesting City Council's authorization to enter into a 5-year joint development agreement with Pierce Manufacturing for a reduced carbon emissions fire apparatus. Portland Fire and Rescue has an exciting opportunity to joint develop and operate a newly designed fire apparatus that fits within the city's 2015 Climate Action Plan. The project is in line with the mayor's 2020-21 general fund budget guidance, directing bureaus to prioritize actions to reduce carbon emissions. Pierce Manufacturing was founded in 1913 and is an Appleton, Wisconsin-based manufacturer of custom fire and rescue apparatus. Pierce Manufacturing is the leading domestic designer and manufacturer of fire apparatus assembled on custom chassis. Portland Fire and Rescue has been purchasing fire apparatus from Pierce for nearly 20 years. To date, Portland Fire and Rescue operates 53 frontline Pierce apparatus protecting all communities in Portland. Funding for this project is covered by Portland Fire and Rescue's ongoing capital budget for apparatus replacement and apparatus reserve fund. The cost includes $690,000 for the fire apparatus and $147,000 for the purchase and installation of an apparatus support system. Portland Fire and Rescue is also actively researching federal, state, and energy grant funding to assist with the purchase. This is a prototype fire apparatus designed to be compliant with National Fire Protection Association standard for automotive fire apparatus. The incentive for Portland, City of Portland and the direct impact to our community and environment is to reduce carbon emissions emitted from the fire apparatus and cleaner air to breathe. By entering into this joint agreement, it will demonstrate to our community that the City of Portland is committed to a cleaner and safer environment. Portland Fire and Rescue is requesting your support and authorization to enter into a joint development agreement for a reduced carbon emissions fire apparatus. Thank you for your time and consideration. And we're happy to answer any questions at this time.
Yeah, very good. And I want to start out, Commissioner Hardesty, and to our esteemed firefighters, thank you for giving me the additional week to have my questions answered. I appreciated it and I needed it, and it was very helpful. So thank you for your forbearance on that front. Colleagues, any further questions? Is there any public testimony on this item, Keelan?
No one signed up, Mayor.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 343, please.
Authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for construction of the Forest Park Entry project.
Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. Portland Parks and Recreation is committed to providing better access to recreational opportunities for all Portlanders. And by moving forward with the Forest Park Entry project, Portland Parks and Recreation delivers on commitments made in the 1995 Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan to improve access to Forest Park. The project will also address requirements by DEQ for permanent stormwater and erosion control measures for the site to protect the health of Portlanders and our rivers. I'd also like to note something that many of my colleagues already know, that we've received a great deal of testimony about this, especially regarding the fire lane access and improvement. And I'd especially like to thank Representative Maxine Dexter and Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward for their testimony, and also former Representative Mitch Greenlick for his past advocacy for Forest Park. I've asked what great staff employees or Great Parks employees to address these issues in their presentation, and I know they will be happy to answer any questions about these issues as well. So I will turn it over to Britta Herwig from Parks to share more about this, this item.
Yes, hi there. My name is Britta Herwig. Mayor Wheeler and members of council, good day to you. I am the Capital Growth Program Manager with Portland Parks, and I'm here today to ask for permission to bid a phase 1 of the Forest Park Entry project. Before we do so, I have some information in a PowerPoint to share with you. And I think the council clerk is bringing that up for us. Can you go to the next slide, please? The project site is located at the intersection of Kittredge, St. Helens, and Yon in Northwest Portland. It's marked with the red star and then the red circle. It is a 3.9 acre undeveloped industrial property, and it is adjacent, not within Forest Park, And the city purchased this land in over the course of several years, 2005 through 2009, with the intention of developing a park entrance with a trailhead and a parking lot. There is some residual PCB contamination from a previous use on the park site. Next slide, please. I have some images of this industrial site. It's at the bottom of the hill, and behind on the hill, you can see the forested hills of Forest Park. Next slide, please. Overview of the project context to date. What's important is that we purchased the property with the intention to develop this trailhead and parking lot. There was some residual contamination, so we entered into a consent order with the Department of Environmental Quality that required parks to complete some permanent stormwater controls as part of the parks project. We allocated project funding, system development charges, and a state grant over the next following years. And we went through extensive public outreach and the design development for a larger project vision. We had to go through a land use review process because it's in an environmental zone. That process was extensive. It was appealed. We reached a decision last summer. As part of that decision, we adjusted the scope for the project and phased the project so that we could meet the requirements from DEQ. We could start the entrance improvements, but we delegated to a future phase the entire project vision. We are hoping to do permitting, bidding, construction this summer and fall, and then by next spring, we'll have phase one of the project complete. Next slide, please. The project goals for the overall project were obviously to improve access to the park. The park is just uphill of the site. With parking, some accessible trails, and a repair to the existing fire lane 1. So fire lane 1 is a narrow fire lane. It is currently used with ATVs by the fire department to access the park. Portland Parks has been and is working diligently with the fire department on the maintenance and repairs to this fire lane to ensure the safety of the park, the fire safety of the park. So this is a little bit addressing some of the public testimony that we've heard. In the past, the fire lane has been overgrown. As part of the land use decision, also, there was a condition last year that Parks commits to improving and maintaining the fire lane. So we've been doing that since last year. We have cleared brush about 8 feet wide. We've met on site with the fire department and put together a plan for the short term to make sure that the fire lane within the park is usable by their ATVs. And we've identified funding to make this repair work. The project that I'm here to ask for permission to bid on is the beginning of that fire lane. So providing access into the site and into the parking lot, obviously, is also crucial to improving the fire lane. The other parts that my project will achieve is meeting the DEQ environmental requirements for permanent stormwater controls on the site to make sure that the small amount of residual contamination that remains on the site after 2 major cleanup efforts and a notice, no further action notice, is completed. And then, of course, Parks and Recreation's goals of creating and strengthening opportunities for stewardship are a major component of these projects. Next slide, please. You can see on the slide the excuse me, the project context. This is a site map. On the bottom left, you have the park access road, which is currently fenced off or gated. It is the fire lane. It will go uphill through a 30-car parking lot, which we will be building. And then to the sort of right center of the slide, is Fire Lane 1 as it exists today. It is eroded. We'll be repairing it so that it's a nice smooth surface and then goes off the project site into Forest Park. All the other trail work and then a nature center that was part of the original or is part of the original design that was agreed with the community is relegated to a future phase because of funding. In addition to the hardscape of the parking lot, will also be providing extensive natural landscaping. Next slide, please. So the action here today I'm asking for is the authorization of the competitive bid solicitation. An emergency exists because we need to get the construction of this access road completed as soon as possible. DEQ has issued a fine against us if we don't complete the construction of the permanent stormwater controls by the end of the year. And then also, obviously, we would like to provide the recreational services and the fire access. So thank you for your time. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Colleagues, while we're thinking of questions, I'll throw one out there. In the concept design, and I don't want to open up a can of worms here, I probably am, but was there any discussion about bicycle access?
Yes, there was. There was actually extensive conversation because this project has been going on for several years and it was sort of on a parallel track with the off-road cycling plan. So throughout this project, we have been fielding conversations around bicycle access. So currently Fire Lane 1 is an access point that is for all modes of access, pedestrian, bicycle, and horseback. We can't accommodate horseback riding because we can't accommodate horse trailers off St. Helens Road, but we can accommodate bicycles with this repair for sure. For the future, we would like to be able to separate pedestrians and bicycles a little bit better for safety reasons, but that is a part of the project that has been relegated to the future. There are some additional trails that are intended to be a downhill trail for bicycles and then additional pedestrian trails because the Fire Lane 1 is fairly steep there at that location. So that will happen with future phases. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I was just curious to know what the conversation was. Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions? Seeing none, this is an emergent. Oh, Keelan, is there any public testimony on this? There might be.
No public testimony.
No public testimony. All right, it's an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Britta, and thank you for addressing the concerns from community members in your presentation and reassuring them that the improvements to the access to the park are long overdue, and especially the fire lane concerns. And I'm happy to support phase 1. I vote aye.
Marty.
Some days it's fascinating to see how long common sense projects take to get to the finish line. Thank you so much for that fabulous presentation, Britta, and thank you so much, Commissioner Rubio. I'm happy to vote aye.
Maps.
I appreciate the environmental benefits this project will bring. I vote aye.
Rubio.
Thank you, Britta, for your overview and your work on this project and for the presentation today. And also, we're appreciative of the partnership with Fire on this project as well. Forest Park is an important natural resource that provides our community so many mental, physical, environmental health benefits. And this project has been long in coming, and I'm really excited that it will improve the Fire Lane 1 access to Forest Park while also addressing mitigation required by DEQ. And as always, I want to see this solicitation result in meaningful opportunities for BIPOC-owned businesses. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
This is great. Happy to support. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. That completes our agenda, does it not, Keelan, for this morning?
It does, Mayor.
All right. So you guys don't have to see me for another hour and 31 minutes. We are adjourned until 2 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you.